Going to be reading from this phenomenal book, The Secret Inner Teachings of Daoism, by William Bodri. I'm not sure how to say his last name. All right. I preemptively apologize for any mispronunciations, as I'm sure there will be many. Introduction. This is not an ordinary book on Daoism with information you can find anywhere. This is about the secret basis of Daoism concerning how you cultivate practice to attain enlightenment and become a Daoist sage like Lu Dongbin. Hence, it does not have the main purpose of transmitting Daoist philosophy or internal alchemy. Lessons since you can find those material elsewhere. The purpose is to unveil heretofore secret Daoist mysteries that were previously taught in riddles, and then guide you to even deeper hidden aspects of the true Daoist path of achievement. Should you fail in joining the ranks of the Daoist Immortals in this life, it will still help to prepare you for this achievement in a subsequent life in 4 ways. 1. It emphasizes that you can only achieve enlightenment if you are virtuous and have merit. Therefore, it encourages you to purify your personality, conduct, and behavior, and perform many good deeds of merit in life. In fact, it points out that the purpose of becoming an immortal is not to escape the lower realm planes of existence, but to take on the occupation or vocation of immortals like Lu Dongbin, who represents the 3rd pure one, Taishang Lao Jun, and help people in the world with your many long-lived transcendental spiritual bodies and their powers. In other words, the purpose of Daoism is similar to that of Buddhism, which is to actualize the bodhisattva ideal rather than simply escape the lower realms of existence by becoming an enlightened arhat. 2. Therefore, it also introduces you to various Daoist fields of knowledge you might start to master in order to develop specialized skills and understanding, wisdom, so that you will have them upon your attainment. Daoism states that naturalism and non-resistance are models for human behavior, but does not eschew advancing scientific knowledge or working out the best ways to approach situations or methods to use, such as in medicine, agriculture, marketing, and so on. Innovation and invention are not against Daoism, but are Daoism, which is responsible for the development of many of the sciences within China. One accepts conditions as they are, but walks step by step to purposefully create whatever you want in life without battling against it. 3. It teaches you that the real path of Taoist practice involves inner qi purification techniques where you wash your body's qi by stimulating various emotions that change its texture and tone, and then guide internal qi movements that churn it in different ways while holding onto the feeling of those different energy qualities. It outlines various Neija, Neijia, inner alchemy techniques across the world's religions that do this with or without the involvement of emotions as the stimulant to change the texture, quality, or sensation of your qi. 4. It explains the Taoist ranks of spiritual achievement, which are stages of immortal body attainments. This unlocks many secrets as to why spiritual masters act in puzzling ways and explains a variety of strange cultivation phenomena that will happen to you at Taoist temples and on the spiritual path in general. To make clear the principle that the spiritual path is non-denominational, it will use ample examples, not just from Taoism, but from Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism to illustrate these principles. Chapter 1, The Three Pure Ones and the Model Taoist Ideal. The message of Taoism is represented within the symbolism of the Song King, the three pure ones, three purities or three divine teachers that are depicted as throned elders. Many Taoist temples contain statues of the three pure ones who represent a triumvirate comparable to Christianity's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit represents the all-encompassing fluctuating energy of the universe that Taoism calls Taiji, while the Father represents the fundamental substrate or substratum of the universe, namely Wuji, that is the ultimate absolute source of creation. The Son represents any phenomenon within the manifest cosmos, any of the 10,000 transformations that appear within Taiji. Our minds, therefore, are the same as the fundamental essence of the universe as are all aspects or attributes of our physical existence. Everything at its core is the fundamental essence of existence. You can find statues of the three pure ones within many Taoist temples, such as Taiwan's famous Songqing Temple, the Taoist temple on Mount Songqing of Jiangxi Province, the Dongshan Songqing Temple, as well as the more modern Green Pine Taoist Temple in Daegon, Australia. The first of the three pure ones represents the most fundamental substrate of the universe. This is the absolute, singular, purest substance, substratum, ground state, or essence of the cosmos. You can consider this the ultimate nature of the universe is a singular, all-encompassing substrate that cannot be further decomposed into other components, but is just one thing. Thus it is unchanging, infinite, eternal, non-active, and homogeneous or pure. You should consider it the most fundamental primordial form of the universe, its absolute substratum as a singular substance or essence without qualities or attributes other than just itself before it becomes manifested as innumerable forms and energies. The second of the three pure ones represents the actual physical universe of manifestation rather than its absolute singular substratum. The third of the three pure ones represents an accomplished celestial master of the Tao, namely a human being and his potential for celestial activity within the universe. The first of the three pure ones, three purities, is known as Yanshi Tain Wang or Yanshi Tain Sun, the heavenly worthy of prime origin. He represents the absolute primordial nature, fundamental essence or ground state of the universe of which all things are essentially composed. This substance or essence was not created from anything else but is a self-so entity. It has always been there because it is the unmoving ground state that doesn't come from anything else. Taoism calls it the nameless one, because it lacks perceptible attributes just like empty space does. In Western religions, it is often referred to as God, while Buddhism calls this the fundamental essence or emptiness because it lacks any phenomena. Judaism calls it Ein Sof. Hinduism calls this Nirguna Brahman or Purusha. Islam calls this Allah, and so on it goes. This is Wuji, the great undifferentiated formless Tao, where there is no existence of Taiji manifestations. Although all-encompassing, the fundamental substratum Wuji is unfathomable because it is void of phenomena, so you cannot perceive it. And because it is empty of manifestations, various religious injunctions across the world tell us not to make any image of it because they cannot denote it. If you make an image of it, then it is just as Lao Tzu says, the Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. Yanshi Taiwang is described as the Lord of the origin of things, or Lord of the primordial beginning. He represents this fundamental singular substrate of the universe, and his title denotes that somehow the complex universe of forms is born from this pure, uncreated, undifferentiated, unconditioned, singular essence that, because it is eternal and pure, never actually changes into anything else. Everything that appears still remains it. He is Lord of the beginning, Lord of the creation of all things, and Lord of the beginningless non-manifestation substratum that is true existence and true beingness. The second of the three purities is Shang King, the supreme pure one, who is also known as Ling Bao Dain Cun. He is the celestial worthy of numinous treasure, who represents manifest existence. He represents the created universe called Prakriti, Shakti, or Saguna Brahman in Hinduism. In Buddhism, the manifest universe of karmic formations or energies is called the triple realm that arises out of the Tathagatagarbha, matrix womb of creation. And in Daoism, it is the Queen Mother of the West, Xi Wangmu, or Wu Sheng Lao Mu, who is the infinite mother or creational origin of all things. In Christianity, the universe that is all realms of manifestations is called creation. Ling Bao Tain Cun represents the universe of manifestation that arose out of its undifferentiated substratum, substance, that lacks qualities like empty space. He represents a frothing, fluctuating cauldron of ceaseless transformations that we call the universe. It is always transforming from one appearance to the next because of ceaseless transmutations that encompass all existing multiplicities of energies and forms. There are laws of cause and effect that comprehensively specify all these transformations, and because everything affects everything else, the entire cosmos is always in a state of vibration, transformation, or indeterminacy. The laws of nature are the laws of cause and effect that specify how phenomena transform into other phenomena, and Buddhism calls the macro set of all causality rules dependent origination, or interdependent arising. All the phenomena of the universe are a simple fabric or singular body, and at the same time they are at its absolute substance or substratum that has somehow become differentiated in appearance into the realm of universal manifestation. Because Shang King represents the frothing universe of ever-fluctuating manifestations, which is an illusion to our sense organs, since it is really just the one fundamental substratum, Shang King is considered the principal disseminator of Daoist teachings. The Daoist teachings here represent all the phenomena of the universe, which Buddhism calls forms and labels. To prove this, we can see that Shang King is also called Jing Bao, the treasure of the laws of nature, or the universally horned one of divinities and treasures, since the universe is differentiated into all sorts of forms, phenomena, energies, processes, or functions that are here called divinities and treasures. Shangqing therefore represents the entire field of manifestation, the all of creation. The everything within the universe are the treasures. In other words, Shangqing represents the cosmos of creation and everything within it. The third of the three pure ones is Taishang Lao Jun, or Dao Di Tianzun. He is also known as the universally horned one of Tao and virtues, the celestial worthy of the way and its power, Dao Di Tianzun, or the heavenly worthy of Tao and its virtue. His other names include Dao Di Zizun and Dao Jiao Zizu, the Daoist ancestor. He is called the I Ching, or Great Grand Pure One, and he is the one most appropriate to us in terms of instructions for our life. He is the Lord of man because he represents the human being who cultivates self-mastery and mastery of the cosmos, which is the goal of Daoist aspirants. He represents mastery because he is consciousness, and it is through consciousness, through a mind, that we have awareness, cognizance, knowledge, and understanding. Because we have a mind, we can develop awareness as well as control of ourself and our actions to produce whatever we want in the universe. As Daijiao Zizu, the Daoist ancestor, he actually represents the ideal of becoming an accomplished Daoist master, namely a Daoist immortal. His title as Taishang Lao Zun, the highest elder lord or grand supreme elder lord, denotes that he is a highly accomplished individual, namely a master of virtues and excellences. He represents mastery of sentience, oneself, and mastery of activity within the field of manifestation, creation. So he serves as a teacher or leader of mankind. He represents us, human beings with minds who can learn to control our consciousness, learn the laws of cause and effect in nature and human affairs, and then employ those laws of consequence to produce whatever we want in the cosmos. Pictures of Tai Ching usually show him holding a fan to indicate that he has mastered thinking and activity, as well as his own internal energy. These are all movements in the field of manifestation and aptly represent by waving a fan, which additionally symbolizes mastery of the energies of the universe that are the forces or attributes of the manifest cosmos. Of particular note is that he symbolizes mastery of the chi life force energy within the human body that is linked to our breathing, and hence the fan, and which is the basis or composition of our internal spiritual body. We must cultivate our inner chi energy and learn to control it in order to attain the higher spiritual bodies of enlightenment that turn us into spiritual immortals because they are composed of energy. He is an accomplished spiritual master who has attained these higher celestial spiritual bodies, which he also indicates by holding a fan. Because we are living beings with higher consciousness rather than inert, insentient matter, survival charges us with this task of mastering ourselves and our environment or circumstances in order to thrive. You can word this, as Daoism does, as meaning that we must learn to be in harmony with the cosmos, as well as master the various aspects of the universe. This is what Daoism is all about, which is how to live in harmony with the universe while also accomplishing our own unique goals within it. Since we are to master cause and effect, not just to survive, but in order to make progress and thrive, it becomes evident that religions which thwart the development of science, math, invention, innovation, and progress are clearly in error. There is certainly a focus in Daoism on naturalism, but this does not mean mankind should refuse to develop itself and make progress in various fields by conducting research and innovating in the fields of science, medicine, farming, and invention in general. The fan in Tai Ching's hand can cause wind, which means that he can create phenomena or events by his pushing or activity, because of possessing a consciousness that understands the cause and effect laws of nature. Insentient matter, on the other hand, cannot think, so it cannot produce self-directed activity. Fanning his fan is also a symbol for pushing around the qi inside one's body. Since Tai Ching can master the laws of interdependent origination that rules the realm of manifestation, he is said to preach the laws of nature, how things are meant to be, as well as how we should develop in life, since development follows the same laws of causality. He represents the highest possible achievement of human beings. He is someone who cultivates his mind and body according to the science of nature to become a Daoist immortal, and he masters the laws of phenomenal change and transformation in order to help the world and bring well-being to it by creating great benefit for others through his activities. In conventional terms, Tai Ching represents a sentient being that evolves within the universe and acts according to its own self-will due to the property of having a mind. Humans, for instance, have minds and sensory awareness, so we can form thoughts to become aware of ourselves and our environment. Because of having consciousness, we can develop understanding and wisdom that enables us to even predict the patterns of transformation of phenomena and gain control over those changes. This is the wisdom, understanding we need for our lives. I'm going to relight my incense here. Come on, baby. All right. Our goal in understanding the causality of human affairs and the cosmos is so that we can use an understanding of cause and effect and its regular patterns of predictability to manage situations, control nature, control natural forces, control material reality, or guide, master the changes of phenomena. We do this in order to make things better for ourselves. We want to control nature and domesticate it under human rule so that it becomes more manageable, more beneficial to us, and much less unpredictable and frightening. We do this for purposes of survival and to flourish. We use rational, logical thinking to investigate nature, to discover its principles, laws, and innumerable transformations in order to use that information to improve our own lives. Consciousness lets us do this. We can do this only because we are sentient and have a mind capable of higher thinking. We grow by developing our consciousness and cognitive skills in various ways to gain control of nature and make our lives better. And Tai Ching represents the guide of Daoism that helps us do this. He not only represents proper, effective, skillful activity, but self-mastery over ourselves and the elevation of our thinking and behavior, our virtues, skills, or excellences. Our consciousness, knowing, knowledge, or awareness is not just a movement of energy within our heads, because you can think of its continuous nature as a moving string of energy in the cosmos. Tai Ching represents the moving aspect of creation embodied in a sentient being that can manage its own functions, properties, and aspects through self-decision and thereby direct them however he wishes through self-will, rather than just robotically, automatically responding to nature due to predictable laws like the chemical reactions of inert matter. Tai Ching is also described as the educator who brings civilization, which is because through his mind and actions, he then acts for culture and society and teaches the people how to act and behave. This is like the Bodhisattva in Buddhism. Tai Ching's highest behavior is disseminating civilizing influences throughout the world, such as ethics in society, technical skills like farming, cooking, medical treatment, or manufacturing, scientific and economic improvements, and knowledge of the pathway to Tao, how to attain our higher spiritual bodies that take us out of the lower realms forever. As an educator who teaches or transmits, Tai Ching represents gaining control over the forces of transformation in the field of manifestation. But in which direction should we take things? He learns the transformations of phenomena and uses his knowledge of how to change things to make situations better, thus enriching the world and human civilization in the material and ethical, moral, cultural, or spiritual spheres. He improves matters. He tries to enrich the lives of people everywhere by trying to create value for them with his efforts to create a brighter future. He helps to magnify their spirit, protect their interests, end their sufferings and difficulties, and gives teachings that serve their happiness and well-being. He teaches the highest methods of cultivation for our bodies, minds, internal energy, and behavior, and also advises society in many areas. He corrects the elites. And then there's a subtext here. It says, no matter the form of government it takes, a nation will develop a governing ruling class of elites at its top that gradually plunders the wealth of other classes and is then eventually deposed in response. Empires bring national stability in the form of a parasitic court of elites. Religions produce national social cohesion at the expense of having a parasitic priestly class. Nationalism raises the power to a nation at the expense of a parasitic military. Socialism brings more equality to the citizenry at the expense of burgeoning debts and a parasitic bureaucracy. And capitalism brings efficiency and prosperity at the expense of a parasitic financiers and an elite class of the wealthy. Countries grow wealthy when they restrain the powerful from plundering people, such as by enforcing the rule of law that protects people's assets. Man-made constraints such as traditions, laws, and institutions also compel a ruling elite to promote the common good rather than its own good. He corrects the elites, corrupt institutions, and those in power who try to oppress or exploit the people, and he tries to help the poor, sick, elderly, widowed, orphaned, and less privileged by engaging in auspicious activities wherever he goes. He intervenes in people's lives in service to the highest principles, acting out of love, and strives to produce prosperity for everyone he meets. We are advised to emulate Tai Ching by developing ourselves in terms of ethics, virtue, and good deeds, as well as in the personal cultivation of our own personal physical health, self-discipline, and mastery of our consciousness. He represents someone who cultivates mastery of his body, consciousness, behavior, and activities to control external phenomena, which he tries to do in the most skillful, easiest possible way. He represents the human endeavor to learn new bodies of knowledge and skills to help society grow and develop, so he represents the continual impetus for human evolution. As a general rule for life, we must transcend our animal nature and train ourselves to develop our bodies, minds, virtues, skills, and activities in order to elevate our personal lives and the conditions for society. This is the primary occupation of a Taoist immortal. Tai Ching, therefore, represents the grand ideal of Daoism, which is someone who cultivates all his own attributes to become a Taoist immortal. He is someone who achieves the higher spiritual bodies of existence that are already inherent in the unpurified energy matrix of our physical body. Once those spiritual bodies become untangled and free, then a true Taoist immortal acts as a guide for humanity and as a benefactor who helps others with the powers he thereby attains. To the Taoist, Jesus is an example of Tai Ching because he is a trinity of God, the Holy Spirit, Shakti, or the manifest universe of vibrations, and himself, a phenomenon, or essence, body and mind. The savior ideal of the Buddhist bodhisattva, who takes vows to perform beneficial actions on behalf of mankind, is also an example of Tai Ching, as are the kami protector spirits and deities of Japan, Orisha of Africa, and Tudigong protectors of cities and communities. These deities all refer to human beings who achieved the higher spiritual bodies of existence, which means they attained enlightenment and then worked to serve mankind. Some religions describe enlightenment, liberation, spiritual ascension, or being saved in terms of purified realms of consciousness, while Daoism describes it as a physical body achievement that ascends to a different, more transcendental realm of existence, where your ordinary consciousness, which becomes a bit more clear with each new progression, simply comes along with your new body attainment. Daoism is thus more accurate, or we should say less misleading, in its description of what enlightenment actually entails, because it has to do with body achievements and the attendant state of consciousness for that new body. Daoists aspire toward a stage of accomplishment called becoming a sage or immortal, which is someone who actually possesses these higher spiritual bodies. They are taught that to attain the higher spiritual bodies, to enter the ranks of the Daoist Immortals, you must engage in spiritual cultivation efforts to purify your internal vital energy, qi, so that it gradually differentiates itself into purer, higher, and less pure, impure, or denser components that can be left behind. The purified qi aspect ascends by separating itself from the denser, impure matter of the physical body, and this is achieving the first stage of the Daoist Immortals. That is why most beneficial Daoist practice deals with purifying your physical body, which is composed of your qi, personality, which expresses your qi, behavior, which comes from activating your qi, and internal energy, which is your qi that, when purified, separates as a new stage of life. Some describe this by saying that we differentiate or untangle the lower from the higher energies of the body to attain the higher spiritual bodies and become a Daoist immortal, or that we separate and purify our body's yin and yang components through spiritual cultivation, or that we raise the frequency of our transcendental etheric components and thereby separate the elevated fractions from our denser nature through an arduous purification process of spiritual cultivation, or that we purify our energy, actions, and personality, and so forth. Essentially, to become a Daoist immortal means that we are becoming pure spirits or pure energy, where each new rank of attainment represents a more transcendental state of existence that is more energy-like in composition than the previous one. Eventually, you can say that the bodies become like light because of its capabilities. Thus, the various spiritual schools of the world say, since their adherents also attain these same non-denominational stages of spiritual attainment, otherwise the attainments wouldn't be true, that through spiritual practice we can stop identifying with our physical body and carnal urges, transcend our lower nature, and rise above the lower planes of existence within the universe of vibrations. This is because we can attain higher spiritual bodies composed of more transcendent materials whilst alive. Thus, becoming a Daoist immortal is a process of spiritual ascension, and therefore it also requires the cultivation of inner virtues and merits. What is surprising is that the three pure ones also stand for the three earliest links within the Buddhist chain of the 12 links of interdependent origination. According to the 12 links, the singular, unmanifest, pure, undifferentiated, unconditioned, self-so, eternal and unchanging foundational ground state, substance of the universe, base reality, somehow turns into the manifest cosmos. Since the absolute ground source is changeless, 1, we do not understand how this singular substratum can manifest a universe of phenomena. So Buddha refers to this impossibility of understanding as ignorance, which is the first link in the chain. We don't understand how Yan Shi Tain Wang generates the universe, which is represented by Ling Bao Dain Cun. The existence of the primordial, uncreated, and changeless eternal Tao is self-so. Hence, it actually precedes the first link of ignorance regarding how the cosmos was created. The second link in the Buddhist chain of dependent origination is Ling Bao Tain Cun, who represents 2, the development of karmic formations, which just means the creation of the universe of manifestation and all its various contents. The pure fundamental substratum of the universe is there in a changeless, unmoving mode free of phenomena, and then it somehow generates this universe of uncountable manifestations. Hinduism calls the manifest universe Shakti, Saguna Brahman, Prakriti, creation, and other terms that basically denote an endlessly vibrating universe that is constantly transforming in all sorts of ways. We see or observe it in a certain way that isn't the way in which it really exists. In Daoism, the universe is symbolized as a cauldron of transformations, and the I Ching describes it using the word change, since it is always changing into some sort of new appearance. Buddhism describes it using the term impermanence to denote that no state within it stays the same. Thus, we should not attach to any. Hinduism uses the term movement or dancing. Shaivism uses the term vibration or scintillation. Physics uses the terms fluctuation or cause and effect. And Islam describes the universe as using the term complex interactions that are all comprehensively connected to one another. You yourself are always continuously changing and rarely remain the same even for a short period of time. Tai Ching charges us to learn the laws of cause and effect that rule these transformations, and then to use them in virtuous, beneficial actions. This is the basis of Daoism that has had a developmental influence on medicine, agriculture, political science, warfare, martial arts, astrology, economics, and the sciences in Chinese culture. A true Daoist tries to move society ahead by discovering the laws of transformation that rule a body of karmic formations, and then teaches others how to apply them for human benefit. Within the universe of ceaselessly evolving transformations, life eventually formed, and in time it developed into complex life that has consciousness. We are that revolutionary development of sentient life and are three, represented by Taishang Lao Jun, Dao de Tain Sun. This is the third link in the chain of dependent origination. As a form of complex life, we are capable of higher consciousness because we have the ability to perform advanced reasoning and can control the abilities of our consciousness, our internal energy, and our movements to some extent. In the universe, we are forms of living sentient existence that have minds and bodies that must be maintained in order to survive, and our species must also procreate in order that it does not become extinct. The great miracle of our existence is consciousness that is the rarest, most precious, and miraculous treasure of the universe. Because we have self-consciousness and advanced cognitive and reasoning abilities, we can learn to control and perfect our mind, body, and behavior, and guide ourselves through self-cultivation efforts to attain spiritual bodies that transcend the lower planes of existence. Those who attain these achievements are honored as saints and sages when they become the spiritual guides of mankind. Each of the three pure ones is denoted as a deity, but each one represents a sequential role in the process of creation. In summary, there is the one, the pure, infinite, eternal, empty, original, spotless substratum of the universe, or Wuji. 2, its transformation through a process we don't understand into the manifest universe that we call Shakti, Purusha, Saguna Brahman, the triple realm, cosmos, or Taiji. And 3, individual phenomena, including the human being who can cultivate his own elevation to become master of himself and the cosmos, because he has the rare and miraculous attribute of consciousness that is lacking in most of the universe. He can become a Buddhist bodhisattva, Daoist immortal, or Japanese kami, and so on, who performs specific functions with his various spiritual bodies and skills to help human beings. This trio is actually the Father, Holy Spirit, and Son of Christianity. Consciousness or knowledge gives rise to comprehension that enables us to attain mastery of ourselves along with the laws of cause and effect that rule manifest existence. The third deity, Tai Ching, Taishang Lao Jun, or Dao de Tain Sun, represents the ultimate model of what we are striving for as human beings, which is self-knowledge, awareness, understanding, mastery of ourselves and mastery of phenomena, and the energies of the universe. Through consciousness and self-mastery, we can ponder the causes of suffering and unsatisfactoriness that afflict human lives, eliminate and ameliorate those conditions, and use our minds, behavior, and activities to pursue and experience happiness, prosperity, flourishing, and bliss. This is the goal of Taoism. Chapter 2, the non-denominational stages of enlightenment and the spiritual ranks of the Taoist Immortals. Taoism offers a philosophy for how to properly manage our consciousness, your senses, thinking, emotions, will, and viewpoints/perspectives. How to run your life so that it flows in tune with nature, and how to become an enlightened spiritual immortal. Because the world is filled with books on Taoist philosophy, we need not spend precious time with information that is readily available everywhere. Instead, we will concentrate on what is not normally known within Taoism, yet is the very heart and soul of Taoism. You can go to Wikipedia and find nearly anything else you want to know about Taoism except this information, since it is usually considered an initiate's transmission. The enlightenment of the Taoist sages is actually the attainment of higher spiritual bodies that they achieved due to spiritual cultivation exercises, especially the inner alchemy of Qi cultivation. When we die, our spirit leaves our physical body shell, and this new spiritual, subtle energy, astral, diva, or angelic body is considered the first of the higher spiritual body attainments. Buddhism says that individuals who are coarse and unpurified become asuras, or angry, unpurified divas, after they die, while the more cultivated and angelic of humans simply become divas. Other schools call those who die spirits, disembodied beings, or simply say that your soul is released upon death, which once again means you become a diva. It's all the same thing, and this couldn't be any other way because it happens to all human beings. The physical world is not the prime reality. The lowest rank of the Taoist immortals is when you achieve this diva body while alive so that it is tethered to your physical nature and you can use both bodies, one for interacting with the physical world and one that lives in the heavenly earthly plane all around us. This subtle body takes refuge within the shell of your physical nature as a home or resting place. Your physical shell is then considered the lower, denser, or most impure part of your total physical nature. Your diva body, composed of qi, subtle energy, or the wind element, is considered the higher, more spiritual part of your nature, which is why Christians say that your soul leaves your body at death. This higher body is then the real you, but the actual truest you, or real man, is locked within its corporeal matrix until you release it through the processes of further spiritual cultivation. Your mind and life continue only as long as your vital qi force remains within you, which means that the basis of life is not purely material chemistry and physics. Matter is not the sole principle of the universe, and physical energy is not its sole mover. You are not just the cells of your body. Life involves a higher transcendental, spiritual component that science hasn't discovered yet, but which is recognized by spiritual traditions. The subtle body endows the physical body with life. Robots and computers do not have this core that transcends the material world, so can never be considered a form of life or as something with actual consciousness. If you didn't have an inner qi body, namely an inner subtle energy body that we call the diva body or soul, you would neither live nor have consciousness. In some sense, it really is as Manichaeism says, that a supernatural light, the subtle body or soul, the divine essence of humans, is imprisoned or ensnared within the darkness of the material world that restricts its true essence and longs to be released through liberation from the world so that it can return to its heavenly home. So there is no reason to fear death. All the secret tantras of Vajrayana relating to Hivajra Guhasyamaja, and chakra samvara practice, etc., are simply elaborate methods for cultivating the chi of your body so that you can attain the stage of being a diva while alive. The same goes for secret Daoist or other yoga techniques. Within the matrix of the angelic diva body, composed of subtle chi energy, is the potential of yet higher spiritual bodies that must be decoupled from within it. Our human condition is like that of a Russian matryoshka doll, where various shells are stacked within one another that Hinduism calls koshas and Buddhism calls skandhas. Various higher transcendental energies interpenetrate with one another in a human shell and can separate out as independent bodies when you engage in the proper practices and processes of spiritual cultivation. This is the process of becoming a Taoist immortal or sage. Each higher body is invisible and intangible to the lower body out of which it immediately arose, because it resides on a higher transcendental plane of existence, which for simplicity's sake you might think of as a plane of higher frequency. While our physical human body is composed of flesh that originates from a union of egg and semen, Jing, the next highest body is composed of qi, which is our vital internal energy that keeps us alive. From within that subtle body composed of qi, you can release a yet higher spiritual body composed of shen energy, which is then known as the causal body in Hinduism or Anagaman stage of Buddhist Arat. So the life force of the subtle qi body is called shen. From within the causal body of shen, you can release a higher supracausal body composed of later heavenly energy through even more cultivation effort, which is the Buddhist stage of the full Arat and Taoist stage of the celestial immortal. Most schools use terms like wisdom and dharma, or light and rainbow, to describe this body because these are good analogies for some of its capabilities. This body achievement is considered enlightenment with a remainder. For the remainder means that there is one more body to go, and thus more purification work can be performed on the energies of that body to generate a yet higher body vehicle. From within the Arat's body of later heavenly energy, which is the stage of Taoist celestial immortal, you can release the highest possible spiritual body attainment, which is to achieve the great golden Arat, immanence body, or Tathagata body attainment of the pure Atman, or Jiva, that is composed of primordial heavenly energy. This is considered the true man or real human being. When Daoism or the Zen school talks of the real man or true man, it is referring to this highest spiritual attainment, your highest and longest living spiritual body that is inherent within the human shell. Once you cultivate and attain the lowest of these spiritual body attainments while alive, which is the astral diva body composed of qi or subtle energy, you automatically become an enlightened Taoist immortal or xian. When you achieve the highest body and are considered fully and completely enlightened for having achieved the highest stage possible for a Taoist immortal. In Hindu thought, the true soul, Jiva or Atman of humans, is this highest innermost core, and our material self has the spiritual task of becoming one with Brahman through the processes and practices of moral refinement and spiritual cultivation that take you to this achievement. To become one with Brahman, the foundational essence, substratum or ground state of the universe, our base reality, simply means liberating from within oneself the potential of the immanence body attainment that is composed of the highest possible etheric energy encased within the matrix of living matter. Buddhism says that all beings have the seed of Buddhahood, which simply means that within the matrix of dense living matter is a very high, transcendental or pure type of energy that can be purified and released as an immortal spiritual body that resides on the highest etheric planes of the universe. This is why everyone has the potential for enlightenment. To attain this immanence body is to attain the highest possible rank of Taoist immortals or sages beyond the celestial immortal attainment, and thus is considered the highest stage of enlightenment. This is the highest possible sage, the universal immortal. The way you achieve the higher spiritual bodies is by purifying your chi through the frictional process of stirring it, just like in the Hindu story of the churning of the ocean of milk, Samudra Manthana, from the Vishnu Purana, that generated all sorts of spiritual beings from within it. This is why Daoism employs countless internal energy circulation exercises in its Qigong and Nigong practices. To achieve the stage of an immortal, all the modalities of your Qi have to be washed through internal Nija churnings that purify them through friction. The Taoist Zhiga Hong, D343, has written, "People reside within Qi, and Qi resides within people. From heaven and earth down to the 10,000 things, each one requires Qi to live. As for those who excel at circulating their Qi, internally they are able to nourish their body, externally they are able to repel illnesses. The basic principle is that there is a subtle body of Qi within us, and this is what becomes released at death to become a Diva spirit. You need to cultivate this Qi in order to live a longer, healthier life by improving its circulation, but a higher achievement is to attain an independent spiritual Diva body composed of Qi that can leave your physical shell at will whilst you are alive. If you are a Diva, which is the Buddhist stage of the Sratapana, you must also exercise your Qi to purify it to become a Sakadagaman, and then proceed significantly enough to purification that you can release a new body from within it, is to achieve a new Angamin, or spirit immortal body made of Shen, which is the next higher form of life force energy inherent within Qi. Buddhism says this body resides in a higher etheric realm of form and divides the realm into several gradients to denote degrees of purification of this causal body, Anagamin attainment. Every time you see a scheme where a heaven is divided into higher and lower partitions, you should simply think of them as notable stages of progress one can achieve in purifying their internal energy until they attain the next higher spiritual body. Daoism is about working with the natural energies of your body, which is called nurturing life, in order to transform your body and mind. This is a process of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual purification. You also want to learn how to use the natural energies of the universe to improve your life and be in harmony with the world by following the natural way of things, or Tao. You can purify your Qi to some extent on your own, which is the preoccupation of a human immortal, through various exercises. Please reference Correcting Zen, which is especially good for Taoist monastics, Arhat Yoga, and Nija Yoga for suitable techniques. However, to succeed at the process to the extent of generating this new and independent life and become an earth immortal requires the assistance of countless higher immortals and their students helping you for years in order to revolve your internal Qi and circulate it in various ways so that it becomes refined through the friction of higher energies rubbing against lower, less purified energies. Thus, you also require virtue, merit, and personality purification. Your internal vital energy, Qi, will gradually differentiate into a purer, higher, and less pure, impure, or denser aspect through this churning, just as milk resolves into denser and lighter components when continuously stirred. A better analogy is when a heavy liquid is stirred in the middle of a vat so that denser dregs accumulate its sides, producing a differentiation in viscosity. And this same type of Qi differentiation happens in the body due to Nijong. We must differentiate the lower from higher energies from within our corporeal physical body to attain the higher spiritual bodies, because this is the process of purification. We must purify our body and its internal energy in a way where the various qualities of our internal energy are activated and washed through a long purification process that takes years of continuous effort, rather than simply just living without doing any cultivation practice at all. You might say that we must separate or clearly differentiate and purify all of our body's yin and yang energy aspects through spiritual cultivation. You can also say that we must raise the frequency of our transcendental etheric components by separating the higher from the lower aspects of our energy nature. There are many ways to alternatively describe this process. Basically, the higher your body or of spiritual attainment, the closer it is to becoming pure energy that lacks any denser components. Thus, spiritual cultivation is the process of becoming more and more like pure energy in your corporeal composition. What activates the various yang tonalities of your energy are positive emotions such as joy, love, courage, happiness, amusement, optimism, sunniness, etc. And what activates or energizes the yin tonalities of your energy are negative emotions such as fear, sadness, grief, embarrassment, depression, etc., or negative body states such as cold, pain, exposure to electronic EMF, and sickness. When through spiritual practice you achieve a new spiritual body, it automatically becomes the new center of your life, while the previous body out of which it arose then becomes just a shell-like appendage used to interact with its own particular plane of being. When the full individual with all his bodies is withdrawn into his physical body, then it seems like he is there. Otherwise, it can seem to very observant people as if he is absent. Hint: a stiffer body and vacant eyes, which some masters hide by wearing dark sunglasses. When his spirit bodies are gone, his physical body can still be operated from afar like an appendage, or possessed and operated by a local diva or master when he is away, which may or may not cause troubles. This is why some masters in India take vows of silence to prevent troubles during long interludes away from their body, or just stay in retreat. Or, an absent master might simply remain motionless in meditation when he is gone, which is not some state of samadhi, but simply the fact that his higher spirit bodies are absent. As stated, sometimes a master's human body will be possessed by another enlightened person to operate while he is away, and in those instances, the master using his body will simply repeat an old lesson he reconstructs from the memories in the brain. That then keeps both the students and the visiting master occupied while also giving that visiting master an opportunity to practice and show off his own skills. Sometimes a master will send his own Nirmanakaya to take over. You transcend each new plane of existence or heavenly realm by attaining a new spiritual body whose energy composition transcends that of the lower realm from which it was distilled or purified out. However, since your lower body remains connected to that new higher body, unless it dies or you sever the connection, you can continue to use that lower body and all others as a shell or appendage to do things on that lower plane of existence and see it as the beings within it experience them. Your higher bodies can move to any of their previous body shells and occupy them so that you can do things on each of the lower realms of existence and respond to people in need. You can therefore give teachings to a lower plane of existence from a higher realm, or manifest miracles in a lower realm by using a body from a higher realm to perform the miracle that is demonstrated in the lower realm. The miracle would not be anything special on the higher plane of existence, but would appear as miraculous to those on the lower planes, even though it would just be an ordinary skill that everyone could learn on the higher plane through ordinary practice. By attaining the higher spiritual bodies, you thereby transcend or ascend above the physical world, thus escaping the lower planes of existence. This is liberation from our material realm of carnality and desire. As long as your physical body is alive, but your new center of life is a higher spiritual body, you can live in the world while transcending it. When you attain any higher body, there is then no reason to attach to anything in the lower planes of existence, so it is easy to preach about detachment, charity, celibacy, bare poverty, and so on, because the truest you is living on a higher plane of existence, where this realm is a throwaway existence that can be compared to a dream. For instance, it is easy to talk about brahmacharya, celibacy, to to people when you have a wife in heaven. Daoism calls the non-denominational ranks of spiritual achievement immortals, to denote their longevity, because the higher spiritual bodies all live far much longer periods of time than an ordinary human life. According to the Zhonglu Chuan Dao Ji, there are 5 ranks of Taoist immortals, who as a group were usually called Fangxi before Taoism became formalized in China. Of these 5 ranks, the human immortal, Rangxian, is an ordinary person who simply cultivates the methods of health, vigor, and longevity, presumably due to following Taoist or otherwise philosophies and methods, to thereby live a virtuous, long, healthy, and prosperous life. You just cultivate the wisest methods of the world, the wisest ways of living, acting, or being to become healthy and live a long life. That's a human immortal. The designation of being a human immortal applies to most everyone who lives according to Taoist philosophies in the world. You don't have to be Chinese or go to China to be a Taoist. Anyone who lives like a Taoist according to its philosophies and perspectives, or who uses its methods of cultivation for health and longevity, can claim they are a Taoist or human immortal. The earth immortal, Daoist, which is the next stage of achievement, is a man or a woman who cultivates spiritual exercises and then becomes able to separate off from themselves their independent inner spirit body made of qi that normally detaches from their physical body upon death. This astral body of qi resides on the earthly heavenly plane where all human spirits reside after the transition of death. Then humans become known as devas, asuras, or spirits. The astral body is known as a deva body or subtle body, but it is an impure subtle body because as subtle bodies go, there are higher bodies possible on more ascendant planes of existence. They require more purification for you to achieve them, so this bottom stage is the most impure of them all. In any case, death is a definite migration of the soul where our inner subtle chi body is released from its mortal frame so that we can afterwards meet deceased old friends in the earthly heavenly plane of existence, if they have not yet reincarnated. So there really is something within us that belongs to the transcendental. We are not totally annihilated upon death, nor absorbed into the totality of the universe at that time. It is simply that our soul, or inner subtle body, escapes the matrix of the physical shell within which it is imprisoned and begins a post-mortem life. Terrestrial beingness with a material body ends, but personhood in a subtle chi body remains for a period of time before its own death and reincarnation. That process of reincarnation is managed or administered by higher enlightened masters who help insert souls into karmically appropriate wombs. Otherwise, there really would be permanent extinction due to the entropic degradation of the spirit body. Hence, our material body is made of Jing. Our subtle spiritual body is made of Qi. This is the basis of the Dixian earth immortal stage of accomplishment. And its own internal life force energy is Shen that can be purified and released as an independent life, Tu, which is then accomplishing the stage of the spirit immortal, Shen Xian. Above the spirit immortal is the stage of the celestial immortal, Tian Xian. That is the typical stage people think of as enlightenment because this is the stage of the Buddhist Arat, Chinese Yuhan, or supracausal body attainment of Hinduism. When the Shen spirit merges with emptiness, this simply means the attainment of the supracausal body that is beyond the realm of form, and thus formless, due to shape-shifting capabilities available because of its composition as nearly pure energy. This information you have just read is far above the teachings you will normally receive in ordinary Taoism. Our inner subtle body is like a life of its own, which is why it is released upon death as our form of living beingness. We have life and consciousness on this material plane of existence only because our material corporeal shell is powered by the presence of an internal subtle body, soul, composed of chi energy, so it is ludicrous seeing individuals insist that computer neural networks, robotics, and AI systems are actually life forms, alive and conscious, when they are just programming code. The idea is as ludicrous as the inevitable merging of humans and technology like the Borg, or the idea that cybernetic enhancements would somehow remain a prized addition to you rather than detriment in the afterlife, or that you will be able to upload your consciousness to a computer or robotic avatar and live forever. Those are the views of silly people who have watched too many science fiction movies or read too many sci-fi books. On the other hand, many individuals have reported out-of-the-body near-death experiences that prove the existence of their chi soul body, attested to by the spiritual masters of many traditions. The problem is that this inner body of ours constitutes unpurified energy unless we perform lots of spiritual practices that purify its nature. This is why Tibetan Buddhism calls it the impure illusory body. It is impure because it isn't composed of refined energy matter, and illusory because it still isn't the real human being or innermost highest body core. The stage of the earth immortal or independent subtle body attainment is equivalent to the impure illusory body of Tibetan Buddhism, the diva body of Hinduism, astral body of Western lore, Srotapana and Sakadagaman stage of Arhatship, and the first and second Bhumi of Buddhism, Sukshma Diha in Nath Yoga, Suddha Diha of the Tamil Siddha tradition, Beauty stage of Confucianism, Pranayama Kosha, energy body made of prana in Vedanta, and so on. Once you attain this body, it becomes the new center of your life, and it enables you to do various things that we would normally call small superpowers. Once people die, they go through an orientation process lasting several weeks to learn how to use their subtle body and are taught how the world really works as regards reincarnation, higher body attainments, the truths and falsities of religion, and so on. They obtain this information because they have spirit bodies but can see the human world all around them, which they can pass through, and also observe the processes of reincarnation and so forth. The subtle diva body composed of our chi energy is the reason we are alive, as it resides within our mortal shell until death frees it. Thus, Christianity calls it our soul. As a spiritual body, it is capable of the 8 siddhi of yoga: anima, ability to shrink one's body; mahima, the ability to increase one's body size; lagima, the ability to become lighter; garama, the ability to become denser/heavier; vasitva, the ability to possess a human and take control over them, etc. No one ever tells people this information, but the siddhi superpowers pertain to the diva body. You can access them once you attain the diva body, but the higher transcendental spiritual bodies have even greater siddhi. Taoism needs to incorporate these lessons into its fold because all it has are pieces of Chinese folk religion that only hint about the doings of the post-worldly life. When people die and then become the earthly divas that are all around us, they have to go through several weeks of orientation, EX 49 up to 100 days, during which time they learn many things such as how to master the capabilities of their new spirit body. An individual who becomes an earth immortal while living, thus becoming a Taoist master, must go through a training and orientation process as well. When you hear knocking on your wall from an unexplained source that is sometimes a diva demonstrating the power of Garama by condensing his etheric form so that through density it can hit the matter of our material world. When you hear music being played in your head, it is because a spiritual master and his students have shrunk themselves down to a tiny size through the power of anima. Thus the Taoist stories of being able to turn one's body into the size of an insect entered your brain and started activating the neuronal memories of the music. Science knows that you can use electricity to activate memories in the brain, but spiritual beings use their chi energy to do this because your body and consciousness run on chi energy, but it takes training to do this with expertise. When you see a martial artist like Sun Lutang, 1933, or a Buddhist monk or Hindu master such as Bhagavan Nityananda, 1961. I think that was Swami Muktananda's teacher. Walk so incredibly fast that you cannot catch up to them. It means they are demonstrating the Lagima lightness siddhi in the human world, although the Diva body can travel quicker. And this is the basis of the Taoist stories of magical footwear, also found in other spiritual traditions, that can let you travel great distances incredibly fast. There's a story in the Old Testament about, who was it? Elijah running down the side of the mountain at an incredible pace that I don't think they could even keep up with on their horses. So that's even in, Christian scripture and Jewish scripture. Let's see here. Most all spiritual traditions talk about the fact that divas, angels, jinn, who are asuras, misbehaving divas, or divas acting as if they were misbehaving, and so forth, can travel incredible distances in the blink of an eye. Any diva can also read your thoughts and memories stored in your neurons after training. So spiritual masters love to astound students by telling them what they did in the past at such and such a time and place, which is from using one of their higher bodies to read your neurons. I once visited a Taoist temple in northern Taiwan where people would wait in line to hear a woman who was possessed by the local guardian deity to tell them what they had been doing wrong in their life. This always entailed revealing secrets no one could possibly know by checking people's memories rather than from reading an etheric Akashic record. Or, like the Saint Padre Pio, 1968, sometimes spiritual masters intervene in human affairs using their higher bodies and later jostle those who benefited by reminding them of the help they had secretly received. Taoist masters are known to do this too, but I'm using lots of examples from other spiritual cultivation traditions to stress the non-denominational characteristic of the path, and also because there aren't too many stories available from modern Taoism. Padre Pio even had a student, Sister Rita of the Holy Spirit, Christina Montella, who would go with him in bilocation missions all over the world. Subtext 2. Christina Montella, Sister Rita of the Holy Spirit, the little girl of Padre Pio, accessed February 5th, 2024. Here's a link. Didn't need to read that. At one time, Sister Rita, 1992, demonstrated how she could make her higher spiritual body materialize so that it became visible to Abbess Matilda of her convent, and then show how it could disperse instantly to disappear. The internet has stories about how she could appear and disappear at will while her ordinary body remained in her room, and how she could use it to travel to different places where it would behave just like an ordinary human body. Once you attain the highest two spiritual bodies, you can readily emanate nirmanakaya projections, meaning that you can materialize a gross material body, Yangshen, at will and become visible to personalities that live on the gross material plane. For example, you can materialize in front of people, talk to them, shake hands with them, and be of assistance in some way, as would Padre Pio. There are, as an example, hundreds of recorded cases of the Carmelite nun, Saint Teresa of Lisieux, 1897, materializing on the battlefields of World War I in miraculous interventions to help French soldiers who invoked her name and prayed to her for intercession. See Stronger Than Steel by Le Puellos. She would materialize herself to heal horrific wounds, save people's lives, or simply offer comforting words of serenity to those who were about to die. Now, divas and their masters masquerading as ghosts, demons, devils, spirits, deities, entities, aliens, etc., love arousing tremendous fear, anxiety, or trepidation in people to stimulate their yin qi. Sleep paralysis is on rare occasions something they are responsible for doing. When you are on a drug trip and experience alien entities, this too is always the local divas and their teachers masquerading as beings from another dimension or some other such nonsense. Divas by nature are always tricksters when dealing with people, but love it because of the fun they get from a sense of superiority. Masters and their students will even show up at witchcraft events or occult rituals to mess with participants and stimulate their energies, which, unfortunately, makes people mistakenly believe in the effectiveness of such evil rituals to everyone's detriment. Just because you have higher bodies doesn't mean you have common sense or higher ethics. Masters also love showing their students their power at taking over someone's mind and projecting thoughts, images, or imaginary experiences, such as out-of-body trips, that are purely imaginative fantasies, and often make judgmental mistakes when doing this. Enlightened beings in this world are basically humans who achieved the higher bodies, and thereafter many love showing off their Nirmanakaya energy skills for doing this, or that such as controlling lower bodies, so they look for opportunities to do this. Where else are you going to use your powers? They love being tricksters, such as by giving dreams to individuals, sometimes to help people, sometimes to trick people, or sometimes to frighten them with nightmares in order to temporarily raise their yin qi for health reasons. Divas love talking to people in useless conversations where they communicate absolutely useless nonsense in roundabout conversations that lead nowhere and prove nothing. And this communication happens by possessing our brainstem. Everyone at the diva stage can do this, so it is no special power at all. Because the astral body, or the astral subtle body of an earth immortal, is the same as the etheric spirit body of ordinary people after they die, with the main difference being that it is more purified due to all the energy work that went into its attainment, and thus it is equivalent to a Sakadagaman instead of Srotapana Arat. The subtle body is earthbound and cannot reach more transcendental, pure lands, even though all the divas know they exist. Once you get to heaven, all the secrets like this are revealed because you can see what's truly going on in the world in the lives of human beings. When people die, they then learn that 1, reincarnation is real because they actually see how the process occurs. 2, spiritual masters have multiple spiritual bodies that exist on various planes of existence, and we are capable of attaining the same bodies through spiritual cultivation. 3, those beings in the higher realms of existence are the ones who answer our prayers and are capable of ordinary powers in those realms that produce the miracles within our realm of existence. 4, intelligent life exists on other planets and in other different realms where many of those species are much more advanced than our own, and some visit us frequently. They also learn 5, that many spiritual doctrines taken as truths in their religion are wrong, and of course that 6, many things they believed about world events were false deceptions of propaganda promoted by various governments. History is not what people were led to believe according to their religions, culture, and governments. Most of all, they learn the truth that 7, man is basically just another internal part or process of the universe. Nature, without a beingness of his own, devoid of anything homogeneous and self-arisen that constitutes a permanent self-core, and merged with the universe without mediation rather than an intrinsic, inherent, independent, real sentient self. Humans arise in dependence on conditions, so have no beingness of their own, and their existence flows with the waves or happenings of the universe. We simply hold on to the wrong notion that we are something different than the universe, and that there is a difference between me and experience, which means the I self, physical body, and the environment. 8, as a process or component of the universe, we have within us an attribute called consciousness, mind, or knowledge that is itself the product of the intersection of countless mental processes. And it is not an I-self-ego entity, but just a point of view. Knowledge is automatically being generated in a sentient being, and this body of knowledge is doing everything, such as thinking thoughts, processing perceptions, coming to conclusions, and guiding the activities of the body within which it occurs. Knowledge is always just producing itself. There is no independent being, entity, soul, or Atman involved in producing knowledge, for it is the process of knowledge itself that is producing knowledge, without an inherent soul being involved. Knowledge makes and experiences knowledge, so a knowledge-making and understanding process is what experiences knowledge in a self-contained feedback process. And we call this sentience. A knowledge-generating machine, process, or object is experiencing knowledge by, in effect, talking to itself. No one is there, and yet there is understanding. Knowledge is talking to itself in a delusory circular fashion when there is comprehension, because it takes itself as an entity, soul, I-self, or knower in its self-talk. One of the attributes to the process of consciousness, 8, is also the function to create an imaginary perceptual picture of the world from our physical senses. It is both incomplete in terms of dimensions and faulted with abbreviation, rounding errors, so that one can never experience the true nature of manifest reality as it truly is. Our sense perceptions and consciousness do not apprehend reality fully or correctly, but only in an abbreviated fashion that we can process. So they only produce false objective knowledge. In other words, what you perceive of the world is just a mind-only representation. It is an imaginary picture or similitude of the world that the brain concocts for you as a representation. The world really doesn't exist in the way it appears to us, and we only observe the universe in a certain way rather than the way it really is, due to our existence stage of physical aggregation that has limitations to its sensory perceptions and capability for mental formations. We can never know for certain how it actually appears. Our views of the external world are merely illusory appearances created by our mind, for that is what consciousness creates, as a process of sentient beings, in order to make the phenomena of living beings able to survive. To explain 9, some animals have different sense organs than us, or different effective ranges for their senses, and perceive the world differently, while some humans have more or less depth to their own perceptions, example of color blindness, or even have synesthesia, such as seeing shapes when hearing music. Essentially, animals and human beings experience the world differently from one another, and there is no way to say which way is the correct way. There is even 10, a time lag in mental processing, so you never see the world as it is now, but only some version of it is represented in your mind from milliseconds in the past, because that's how long it takes for your brain to create an image. Furthermore, 11, our thinking processes of knowledge making are not just slow, but often illogical in making conclusions, prone to shortcomings and faults, such as when you make a math error or misinterpret an optical illusion, and easily biased or distorted due to the influence of emotions, incorrect assumptions, and false perspectives. So during the operations of consciousness, it is knowledge itself, rather than an I-self, that is experiencing thoughts, knowledge, and perceptions, and producing a biased point of view that is often errant and certainly subjective rather than universal truth. Knowledge produces knowledge, and the experiencer of knowledge is knowledge, as well, without any true being, soul, spirit, personality, Atman, or Jiva being involved. Again, 12, we erroneously conclude that we are an inherent self-contained self, but our view of being an intrinsic self is a delusional, imaginary set of thoughts automatically created as the basis of consciousness, where this delusory perspective is built up during the infant child stage of automatic conscious actions in order to make higher thinking possible. This I thought gives you the sense that you are thinking your thoughts when in fact nothing of the kind is happening. Knowledge is just talking to itself without an intrinsic self being involved. You are just a process seamlessly connected to the universe without mediation and operating/functioning as your process is designed to do according to your anatomy and needs. The whole universe is getting into the act of composing you and having you think in a certain way, so the whole universe is the doer of you rather than an I self, you, that you take yourself to be. During the process of thinking, it is essentially the thought processes of consciousness itself that are doing the thinking, rather than a separate, stable, eternal I or self that is an independent, inherent Atman, soul, jiva, or sentient being. And that process derives from your construction, upbringing, etc., with the whole universe getting into the act. Nevertheless, that I thought of being a self must be there for consciousness to operate, while an inner subtle body needs to be there for there to be life. But the thinking process itself, knowledge, is automatically doing all the thinking and understanding without any real individual self-entity, I, soul, self, jiva, or Atman being involved. It's just another process of the universe going on that is connected to and influenced by everything else, but it mistakenly thinks it is something separate from the universe, nature, and different from what it actually is. The self-concept is a fiction or falsity, a maya, an illusion or delusion. In Buddhism, the self-sense or I-thought is the outcome of a complicated set of mental algorithms called the seventh consciousness, while perceptual processing is performed by individual algorithms, sense consciousnesses, for each sense organ. The sixth consciousness constitutes the mental algorithms for thinking and pulling the sensory outputs together into a single picture of the world. And the alaya consciousness includes our memories and all sorts of other mental forms, archetypes, mental algorithms, mental processes, and interrelationships. The processes of consciousness, knowledge, give rise to an assumed apparent I-self that thinks it is the doer, when that very I-self is just a mental product of myriad conditions that produce it within the processes of consciousness as a consequential result. Knowledge is the doer, not an I-self, and knowledge itself is ultimately a product of the universe, nature, which is the ultimate actual doer. Knowledge, when it provides understanding to itself, is just a process of knowledge producing more knowledge that also includes an illusion of understanding. There is conceptualization and intellectualization going on, but no being who is actually doing the thinking and producing the conceptions. Knowledge is doing the thinking and the understanding. Doing and thinking exist, but there is no real doer or thinker within those processes. Yet there is still doing, thinking, understanding, and experiencing. In other words, knowledge is experiencing knowledge without there being an intrinsically real person in the process. There is understanding, but there is no being experiencing the understanding. Knowledge is experiencing the understanding, and so understanding is there for that knowledge without there actually being a sentient doer within the process. There is just knowledge doing everything. There is just knowledge operating on its own without any inherent self being involved. Knowledge is not an I-self ego entity. Knowledge is just knowledge, a point of view, a construction of a large set of self-referential mental operations and memories that constitute knowledge. There is an apparent self involved in this process, a false self involved in knowledge making that is itself just knowledge, to make the processes of consciousness operate, but there is no intrinsic permanent self or permanent process of knowing actually involved in all this. There is just a conditional process of knowing operating according to the rules of the process. Knowledge is knowing knowledge without an intrinsic, independent, living being involved in that process, and yet understanding is there. It's the universe that is there. The self thinks it is calling the shots of thinking and doing the understanding when there is no true self being behind those thoughts, and the assumed self cannot even control its mental realm as it wants. Knowledge without a self is doing all the doing. Knowledge is the doer of deeds, which also means that your attributes are not fixed. Furthermore, because this is what you are, you have no reason to cling to any forms of suffering. 13. Thus, man, as a fluctuating energy process with a special attribute called consciousness, that other forms of inanimate nature lack, acts as a channel of energy that shapes events through the ideas he holds. He is strongly influenced not just by his genes that produce his anatomy, his education, upbringing, and training, local circumstances, his pondering and experiences, etc., that fill his consciousness with thought patterns, but also by universal forces such as those encapsulated in astrology, keyed to your birth time, and feng shui, keyed to your location or climate, and so on. One way of looking at this is that you are controlled by the universe insofar as you constitute its body. You can read about all these factors and more in Arat Yoga. However, 14, through practices such as visualization, see sport visualization, or visualization power, you can fully imagine yourself using all 5 senses in the situations you want, and then persistently work to create a new future aimed at your goals through your conduct and daily activities. You can actually create a new fortune other than what is already set to occur because of your current parameters of personality, psyche, and behavioral conduct. Lao Fan's 4 Lessons, the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling, Betcher, Quick Fast Done, Bodri, and Positivity, Phil Hellmuth tell you how to do this, which is why I always recommend them. What you learn after your enlightenment as a Daoist is the same thing you learn after your enlightenment as a Confucian, Buddhist, Hindu, Jew, Muslim, Shinto, Christian, and so on. Namely, 1, your existence as having an independent, intrinsic, non-composite selfhood is a conceptual illusion, a false imagination, an errant belief. 2, all phenomena arise in dependence on other conditions, so they also have no beingness of their own, as conditions or forms that arise based on conditions. They have no beingness on their own, since they are dependent constructions whose existence depends on other factors rather than them being self-so. Thus they are devoid, empty of any core permanent self that stands/exists on its own. As it actually stands, all things are coexistent simultaneous arisings dependent on all other things for their existence. They appear or manifest because each is infinitely connected to all others with entanglement, and the whole is one single fabric that constitutes manifest reality. Individual phenomena are not only interdependent simultaneously arisings based on the existence or influences of everything else, but interpenetrating, interfusing, mutually inclusive, and all-pervasive within each other. This is because all points of the universe are entangled with every other point to make one whole. Holography. You consist of all things, and they also consist of you, where one is in all, and all are in one, because reality is one manifest unity of presentation within one single fabric substrate. 3, therefore all phenomena are impermanent, non-homogeneous, conditional constructions, incessantly vibrating in a state of indeterminacy, all connected to one another through entanglement, and thus always changing while lacking anything permanent as an innate own nature, permanent core, that can be grasped, while incorrectly see them as distinctly differentiated individual phenomena because of perceptual mistakes made by your mind. 4, you cannot ever correctly, objectively perceive the external world of dependent reality around you to know what it truly is, the ground of the world or things in themselves, because there are limits to your sense organs and mental processing abilities, which are imperfect and inadequate. Hence, all you can perceive is an apparitional, provisional mental reality, mind only, that is an illusion made by your mind. It is a similitude, approximation, or representation, yet that false Maya mental fabrication, together with other personal subjective biases, enables you to survive. You are an imperfect and inadequate mechanism that creates your own reality through patterns in your mind, thoughts. The ideas you choose to hold create your own reality. You are not designed for full spectrum facticity, but for a level of fitness that temporarily enables your survival in the world for a period of time. 5, Besides your false sensory image of the world that you build up in your head due to the consciousness algorithms for processing each type of sensory input, even your conceptual objective thinking operations of consciousness, called the sixth consciousness in Buddhism, are fraught with logical errors, prejudicial biases, and other imperfections, so you can never create the one true perspective. This is why we must always observe our thoughts with clear mindfulness so that we can subject them to self-correction. 6, you're definitely imperfect, and you don't always function in the way you want to function as regards your thinking and behavior. You often get caught up in false stories your mind concocts, false perspectives, or ways of doing things that you cannot escape from. Sometimes you cannot control your behavior or your mind, and in particular have troubles with transforming your emotions, eliminating mental afflictions, ending habits, and maintaining perseverance and concentration due to the algorithms of your alaya consciousness that rules memory and the structure and operation of countless mental operations. And algorithms. You also create a false image and identity for yourself due to the mental processes / algorithms that create your I sense, which Buddhism calls your seventh consciousness, as well as false limiting beliefs that become difficult to unlearn even though they are untrue. Most important of all, 7, you cannot even mentally fathom or perceive the singular pure fundamental substratum of the universe that is the ground state of all being, what you truly are, and thus you can never know your real self, your true self nature, your true self. You can never perceive it through your senses or any type of senses or through any other way. No such thing as actual emptiness, nothingness, unmanifestness, or qualitylessness can be experientially realized as knowledge, since thoughts are the antithesis of emptiness. You can make an image of the fundamental self, the absolute substrate of everything, but then that would not be it or accurately represent it, because any image has turned it into a phenomenon when it is a phenomenaless state. This is why Lao Tzu said, "The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao." You can read more about what the enlightened man or woman discovers in my books, Arat Yoga and Correcting Zen, which, although it says Zen, is actually the best guide available today for setting up Taoist practice routines. In Buddhism, the attainment of this independent subtle body when you become an earth immortal is called the stage of attaining the Tao, or crossing the stream, or crossing the great river. After you attain this independent spirit body, which is becoming a Sratapana Sakadagaman, Arat, according to Buddhism, then and only then do you embark upon the stage of true cultivation practice, where you continue cultivating to attain the yet higher spiritual bodies of Arhatship until you finally reach the great golden Arat, immanence body or Tathagata body of complete and perfect enlightenment. This initial stage of becoming an earth immortal, which is attaining the subtle diva body composed of chi energies while you are alive so that it is tethered to your living physical body, constitutes the initial stage of spiritual enlightenment or liberation. Its attainment is also called crossing the shore, ascending into heaven, the winged transformation, liberation from the corpse, becoming twice born, the fruit of internal alchemy, crossing the stream or entering the stream. It only constitutes the initial stage of the ranks of higher spiritual attainments. The spirit immortal, Sheng Xian, is the next spiritual stage of attainment after the stage of becoming an earth immortal. In Christian terms, the earth immortal stage of Qi is like becoming an angel, while the stage of becoming a spirit immortal, composed of Shen, is like becoming an archangel. The spirit immortal's body arises out of the matrix of the earth immortal's spirit body, just as the diva body, composed of Qi, arises out of the human shell when we die or succeed at spiritual cultivation. However, the body of the spirit immortal is composed of Shen energy that is one step transcendentally higher than Qi. This body is equivalent to the causal body of Hinduism or Anagaman stage of Arhatship, and is also known as the mental body, wisdom body, mantra body, body of vibrations, pranava deha, man's spirit, grace body, or purified illusory body in other traditions. All traditions have a name for it since it is a non-denominational achievement. Regardless of your spiritual path, we all cultivate to attain the very same spiritual bodies to progress out of the realm of matter forever. The spirit immortal stage is also equivalent to the third and fourth bodhisattva bhumas within Buddhism. It is also referred to as the conception skandha in Buddhism and the manamaya, mind stuff, kosha in Hinduism, and is the stage of an anagamin arat. When the Thai Buddhist monk Ajahn Mun, 1849, announced that he had become an anagami at age 43, it meant that he had reached the stage of becoming a spirit immortal. In Sikhism, the rank of becoming a spirit immortal is the third level of development or sphere of spiritual attainment that corresponds to the Saram Khand realm of spiritual efforts. It is hard to pass through this level to attain the next higher supracausal clear light body, dharma body, rainbow body, or wisdom light body of Buddhahood, which is the stage of the full arat or Daoist celestial immortal, where one's new transcendental body is essentially entirely free of the lower realms of matter. That is why Buddhism says it belongs to the formless realm. When you achieve this body, you become free of the lower realms forever. The celestial immortal, Tian Tian, in Daoism is that exact same spiritual body achievement and is thus equivalent to a Buddhist erat. Buddhism, Daoism, and Hinduism explain that those who attain this body become officials overseeing the human realm and administering various management affairs. As stated, the supracausal body is also known as the clear light body, wisdom light body, jnana deha, dharma body, rainbow body, Buddha body, arat body, and so on. It is composed of what Daoism calls later heavenly energy, Qi. It is one with the universal life, comprising the lower levels of energy, meaning that it can sense the happenings in all the lower energy realms of nature because its energy realm interpenetrates them at a very high stage of refinement. Hence, it can be a witness of the universe, able to freely hear and comprehend the minds of lower sentient beings whose thoughts are composed of lower energies readily accessible to this body's more transcendental level, and able to access their knowledge and wisdom. When you recite a mantra or prayer asking for help, your plea is heard by Buddhas at this and the next higher level of being. When someone attains this body, we say their wisdom opens up, because they no longer need to enter into someone and read their neurons to know their thoughts, as is necessary for subtle-bodied divas and causal-bodied individuals, whose attainment stages are orthodoxically called the second and third dhyana in Buddhism or earth and spirit immortals in Daoism. Rather, they can sense thoughts in the environment as they happen, or they can use Nirmanakaya emanations to access the brains of individuals in order to know their memories and thinking, or to send them energy to give them thoughts or sensations. Krishna, for instance, at one time caused Durvasa Muni and all his men who were visiting the Pandavas to feel satisfied of their hunger through such Nirmanakaya emanations. The celestial immortals and higher can even do this for animals such as snakes, parrots, dogs, cats, horses, tigers, elephants, etc., which is why enlightened sages can communicate with animals. The Hindu sage Ramana Maharshi, 1950 for instance, is famous for being able to communicate with animals, and in China, I once heard of a Daoist master who was always communicating with rabbits. With training, all of the higher sages can do this by emanating Nirmanakaya to enter into and give animals thoughts and feelings, which is why they can tame them. You can even do this to deceive people and make it seem that an animal, like a mule, can talk, which is just the Nirmanakaya talking rather than an actual animal speaking. Masters use such tricks all the time to convert people using miracles. You can emanate Nirmanakaya projections to make people see non-existent things by giving them imaginary visions. For instance, they might perceive someone floating in the air when that vision is only inside their consciousness that has this false picture, then overlapping on top of the images constructed of an outer world. Basically, you can make people see things that are not there. I visited many Taoist temples in China where I would see etheric forms in the environment that were simply fake Mara projections in my consciousness because a local spiritual master wanted to try out his skills of projection by overlaying his powers of visualization on top of the workings of my consciousness. Whenever you see any type of vision, it is due to an enlightened person putting those images in your mind, which is usually done by also giving you attendant thoughts that interpret them along the way he/she wants, but you cannot tell that this interpretation is not yours either. Shakyamuni Buddha spoke about 10 large classes of Mara delusion and deception that spiritual masters project into people's minds within the Mara demon section of the Surangama Sutra, which you should read. You might see a dragon in the environment, or a flying celestial maiden, or gigantic Buddha in the sky, an ancient ghost in a graveyard, or troll underneath the ground, and all sorts of images that someone wants to conjure up as a joke, or sometimes to help you. You might see the stars of the Taoist Big Dipper practiced in someone's chest, or an immortal with a fan furnace within his dantian, or a human master's body or face might even seem to somehow change in shape, as an etheric superimposition when you view it. You should laugh when you hear people say that they saw someone's face etherically change for a moment into that of a lizard, thus making that person believe they must be shape-shifting reptiles. Everyone with powers wants to practice on humans, so they play tricks by overlaying images on whatever you are already seeing with your visual consciousness, whereas these superimpositions are really just Mara, delusion, projections in your brain being overlaid on top of whatever you are normally seeing. There is a tendency for ordinary non-enlightened divas to just want to display their powers to their friends as a joke and decide to use you. None of them care a stitch about you, which is why many strange visions and events typically happen at hotels where there is a constant flow of guests that come and go without belonging to the local population. The enlightened ancient Native American Indian masters love projecting nirmanakaya of scary humanoid creatures, skinwalkers, werewolves, pale crawlers, wendigos, black-eyed children, jinn, etc., that instantly appear and then disappear, thus demonstrating their shape-shifting skills to diva students while greatly frightening onlookers who need yin qi stimulation, such as soldiers or hunters who cultivate too much yang qi, or people who are sick and need a spike in their yin qi. You can also project a nirmanakaya into someone and take control of their body so that they are frozen and cannot move, such as in night paralysis. Of course, you can even do this to someone who is standing and engaged in some type of physical movement. The Hindu Bhagavan Nityananda once froze in the air the arms of a thief who was assaulting him, and the Greek Orthodox saint Arsenios, the Cappadocian, 1924, who was the spiritual father of Paisios of Athos, was often known to freeze the movements of Turkish soldiers about to do the Greeks harm. This was done by emanating nirmanakaya to go into them to freeze their movements. By inserting thoughts within them through nirmanakaya emanations, many saints have also brought thieves to their senses. Many people suffer paralysis in bed at night, and it is often the work of the local enlightened beings who are teaching lessons to diva students. During those times, people suffer great fright, which is a way of raising their yin qi so it can be refreshed. And nirmanakaya emanations are also commonly used to arouse joy, courage, or confidence for people who pray for it in need of, or any other emotion that the originating master has practiced to develop. Sometimes they put words into your mouth where you know the one speaking is not you, so that those words can help others. Wisdom means understanding, and because you can know the minds of others and understand their thoughts automatically when you attain the highest bodies, your wisdom will increase by leaps and bounds as you learn new things due to these spiritual body attainments. The supracausal or wisdom body is referenced as the volition skanda in Buddhism, Vijnanamya wisdom, kosha in Hinduism, and it corresponds to the Karam Kand, realm of grace of Sikhism. It is the full Arat stage that can finally project nirmanakaya emanations that are energy copies of that body. When a master can perform bilocation and be seen by others, it is because he has attained this stage of achievement. This is what a master normally uses to give thoughts to individuals, such as the urge to give to charity, or even the urge to have sex with one's spouse, so that an individual who is ready can reincarnate as their baby. In the Chinese classic Journey to the West, which was supposedly written by a Daoist, there is a section where a magic six-eared macaque impersonates Sun Wukong, and no one can tell the two apart except for Buddha. The meaning is that when a Nirmanakaya possesses your consciousness, then your thinking will seem like it is yours, but actually belongs to the Nirmanakaya emanation of an enlightened spiritual being, yet you won't be able to tell the difference. For instance, the Hindu sage Neem Karoli Baba, 1973, was commonly known for being seen in several places simultaneously, which means he achieved this state at the minimum. When you can carry things from one place to another, it is even higher than the stage of just being seen as a tangible entity, which Daoism calls a Yangshen. And there are Daoist stories to this effect where a master and his students were challenged to go to a faraway location, pick a fruit, and return with it. In this story, you should ignore the mention of spirit animals since they are fictitious. Only the highest bodies can take an item from one location to another, while the lower spiritual bodies cannot do so. And here's the story. The Tang Emperor Xuanzang counted several famous Daoists among his closest advisors. They were Zhang Gaolo, one of the 8 Immortals, Yi Fashan, and Lao Gangyan. One time, the emperor wanted to test the spiritual and magical skills of these 3 men. He invited them to his court and said, "I have heard that fruits are ripening in the southern province of Jianan. I wonder if the 3 of you could go there and bring back some delicious fruit for me." Xuanzang deliberately devised this task to test the Taoist's ability to travel in spirit, for Jianan was several thousand miles away from the capital. The 3 men bowed and took up the challenge. The next day, they gathered in the hall of the imperial Taoist shrine. Zhang Gaolao said to the emperor, "By evening, I will have the fruits here for you." Yi Fashan said, "Your Majesty, I can get them to you by mid-afternoon." Lao Gangyan said nothing. He simply sat down on the ground, took off his shoes, and smiled. Incense was lit, and the 3 men went into a trance. The emperor reclined on his chair and waited. The noon hour passes. Then it was mid-afternoon. Yi Fashan failed to produce the fruits as promised. The day went on. By evening, Zhang Gaolao had come out of his trance empty-handed. Then as the last light of the day disappeared, Lao Gangyan opened his eyes and clapped his hands. A bowl of fruits from Jianan materialized in his hands. Surprised that he had come up empty-handed, Yi Fashan asked Gangyan, "I was first to arrive at the orchards. How did you manage to get the fruits when I could not?" "You must have used your magic to obstruct us," said Zhang Gaolao jokingly. "Yes. Tell us what your trick was," added the emperor. Lao Gangyan replied, "It was no trick, your Majesty. You see, we were all in the orchards of Jinan. Fashan projected his spirit out of his body and went to the orchard in his mind. That's why he was the first to arrive. However, while he was able to pick the fruits in spirit, he could not return with them corporeally. This is the stage of an earth or spirit immortal. Gaolao, on the other hand, was able to send a double of his corporeal body to the orchard on his magical donkey. This is a celestial immortal. However, the fruits were lost when he mounted his spirit animal to return. I was able to produce the fruits because I not only went in my corporeal body, but returned without the aid of a spirit animal." This is from Tales of the Dancing Dragon by Eva Wong. Sometimes a Tudigong, local protector god, which is basically a diva who attained enlightenment, Cheng Huangyi, city protect god, Sheiji, state protect god, or spiritual master who attained enlightenment will even generate a Nirmanakaya emanation, appear to people and offer physical help of some type for their situation, or deliver some type of message or a warning to help prevent catastrophe. People normally cannot recognize their status as celestial and universal masters, but afterwards think about the situation and consider this an encounter with an angel. If the individual is their spiritual master, then they know it is just one of his or her Nirmanakaya emanations, but often other masters will project emanations that pretend to be deities or spiritual greats of the past. No one ever wonders how they knew it was a famous personage they never met, but it's because they projected thoughts of recognition inside you as well. Since I mentioned the Tudigong, Shiji, and Chang Huang Yi, which do exist for every local, I want to bring up a disturbing development at temples due to the invention of electricity and electronics. That trend is the constant blaring of recorded music at a temple or place of worship, which is more of an obnoxious advertisement than an act of respect or reverence for those who might help us. If you were a deity, would you want loud music to be continuously blaring at your holy spot all the time with blinking lights that are an eyesore? The practice is disrespectful and shows that people do not truly believe that spirits or deities attend those locations, but they do. The practice of blaring loud spiritual music at temples and flashing lights should cease. A temple should be a place of tranquility rather than an advertisement for commerce or donations. In Buddhism, the celestial immortal stage of Daoism is equivalent to the fourth dhyana attainment, seventh and eighth bodhisattva bhumi, and is recognized as the stage of a full erat. This spiritual body achievement that resides on a very high plane of existence, which of course we cannot measure, is the classical meaning of becoming enlightened, even though attaining the earth immortal achievement is technically enlightenment too, but just junior enlightenment. The everlasting and imperishable, long-lived body of the celestial immortal is the attainment that people normally think of when they hear the word enlightenment or immortality or escaping the lower realms of incarnation. Yet the attainment of this transcendental body, which is free of all coarser levels of matter and energy so that it consequently exhibits a tremendous flexibility of shape, is still considered nirvana with a remainder. That's because it is capable of formlessness, due to shape-shifting, yet imperfect since there is one remaining body attainment left that is a yet higher level of physical purification. People always think that becoming enlightened is to experience some mystical mental state of purity, but it actually means the attainment of these higher spiritual bodies, where your mind becomes more clear with each new body because the anatomical basis is closer to pure energy. For various reasons, the masters of most traditions, except for Daoism, have chosen to continuously misdirect people into thinking that enlightenment is simply a mental attainment of some type of special consciousness. I don't like deceptive misdirection, so I'm spilling the beans so that your Daoist practice won't go astray. You can meditate all you want and will never generate a spiritual body. Try mentally projecting one and it won't happen either. You must do inner energy work, and then the process has to be taken over by countless spiritual beings that will continue working on you around the clock for 12 or more years of purifying transformations. Tibetan Buddhism tells you clearly that emptiness meditation won't win you enlightenment, even if you do it for 10 eons. Inner energy work won't get you there either, and so you must do both. You must meditate and perform inner Nigong exercises to attain the Tao. The Buddhist sutras record that at one time, Shakyamuni Buddha told a man that there is no God, and at another time he told a different man that there is a God. He explained to his students that each was told what he needed to hear to help him move forward. Furthermore, the Buddhist Lotus Sutra tells us a story about lying to children in order to save them from a burning house from which they must escape, and that compassionate motivation is the reason for the deception. Well, the same reasoning applies for presenting enlightenment as some type of mental realization which leads people practicing hours of emptiness meditation or mental watching. These are the easiest times for spiritual beings to help transform your chi, since they are not then fighting your chi currents that instantly respond to your thoughts. If you are empty or detached, then there are less errant chi currents to fight against when devas use their own powers to move your chi to help you. You will certainly pass through many mental experiences when cultivating the spiritual path of Daoism or any other tradition, but the only true enlightenment is when you attain a higher spiritual body. In many stories where a master is sitting in samadhi without moving It is simply that his higher spiritual bodies are traveling around, and we call that deep meditation to mislead people. The masters of Sufism directly tell people that. For instance, Sufi Sheikh Muhammad Hisham Kabani stated clearly in the hierarchy of saints that the enlightened often travel from their locations, leaving behind their bodies to help people who need help, and their bodies remain motionless during their absence, so you should not disturb them. Incidentally, Sufism says that we have a gross body, subtle body, mental body, universal body, and Shiva Atma, or Paramatma body, which accord with the stages of Daoism. Similarly, according to Sufi theology, you must engage in an unveiling or tearing off of veils to see God's face and experience unity with Allah, which refers to casting off lower body shells / sheaths to attain the most primal form of man, the Atman, immanence body, or stage of the great golden Arat, or universal immortal, that is the highest core of humans. If people commonly knew that a master had spiritual bodies that travel around and can know things, they would ask for this and that, and put him under all sorts of burdens, so everyone keeps this capability secret, and the fact that they are enlightened is kept secret too. Now, the body of the celestial immortal resides at the level of the formless realm, mentioned in Buddhism, since it is free of all lower forms of dense matter in the form and desire realms. Some schools call it a wisdom light body or rainbow body to denote the fact that its compositional essence is like light that can be split into many parts, just as a rainbow appears from white light that passes through a prism. This body can twist and turn in all sorts of shapes without restriction, which enables it to create all sorts of energy movements and effects within any human body it enters, including vibrations and sensations of various types. In particular, to the process of spiritual cultivation, masters also learn how to control its yin and yang aspects so that they can supply people with the feelings of kundalini energy that can be hot or cold. The strange currents of hot and cold energy that people feel inside themselves during cultivation practices are typically due to a celestial immortal, Buddha, or higher beings helping them move their energies with his own. The phenomenon of Shaktipat, where a guru sends you his energy, is exactly this. A Nirmanakaya emanation sent inside you to move your chi / prana by moving its own energy within yours and then affecting yours through the friction of contact. Some masters tap you on the shoulder when doing this, or point at you, wave a fan, shout a word, or perform all sorts of other non-essential movements to indicate, hey, I caused this in you. You can read about various masters from other traditions using different techniques to do this, but they are all doing the same thing in disguise. When you perform Taoist practices and feel energies moving inside you, this is rarely due to the activation of your energy. It is usually an immortal's energy moving inside you who, in kindness, has decided to help you by using one of his many body doubles, Nirmanakaya emanations, to enter your body to help you purify your chi. Taoists prepare you for understanding and accepting this fact, rather than have you recoil in fear when you encounter this, through fake stories about all sorts of deities living within your body, so you get used to the fact that other beings will enter inside you. However, no one lives in your body, but various masters do enter your body temporarily to give Diva students lessons on how the brain forms thoughts, how your internal organs operate, and for helping you rotate your inner chi, so that the friction of rotation will eventually purify the vital energy that is the material stuff of your inner spiritual wisdom. Your spirit body of chi leaves your corpse upon death, but those individuals who have sufficiently cultivated during their lifetime have increased its purity to some extent and thus live longer in heaven than ordinary human beings, thus giving them valuable time to cultivate in the earthly heavenly realm. The supracausal body of which we are speaking lives such a long life that this is where the term immortal originally comes from. This supracausal celestial immortal, Arat, universal body, or Buddha body can generate energy copies of itself, called Nirmanakaya emanations, just as light can be split apart by a prism, and they can be projected as independent entities in the world to perform specific deeds. When you can physically see them as tangible manifestations rather than just invisible energy manifestations, the Chinese call them yang shen emanations or fen shen body doubles. A large portion of the Buddhist Ksitigarbha Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra is about how Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva continuously sends countless emanations of himself out to help all sentient beings in all sorts of ways. The most common way of using Nirmanakaya is by giving people thoughts and warnings, but most people tend to ignore these emanations within our minds. When you finally are able to attain the celestial immortal's body by cultivating the internal energies of your causal body's existence, you will live as a body vehicle whose structure doesn't deteriorate quickly because of the long-lived nature of its compositional elements, referred to as light or later heavenly energy. Therefore, it is said you will live practically forever as an immortal, which just means extremely long-lived, with the further connotation of escaping the lower realms of suffering forever. When it must die, this etheric body is so high that it can carry strong memories of its life into a new incarnation, which even happens to some extent when lower-level arhats are reborn, thus ensuring a type of continuity, unbroken continuum, or immortality from an entirely different aspect of deathlessness. With the attainment of the supracausal body, or celestial immortal achievement, you escape further incarnations in the lower realms because of your transcendental physical composition that is absent of unpurified matter that transcends the lower realms. Being free from the lower planes of existence because your energetic existence transcends all matter and energy within those realms, and now understanding oneself as belonging to the comprehensive unity of all things in the one soup of manifest reality, an attainee realizes that there is no such thing as a separate, independent existence because the universe is one thing and you are it. At this stage, one recognizes that the universe of part is actually a single fabric, and they are like a tiny colored portion within it that is merged with everything else. One becomes free of ignorance, delusions, and misunderstandings as regards the origins and evolution of life, because they can see events of the far past and events due to happen in the future, since those events have an etheric pattern already existing in the higher planes of the universe. Thus one becomes emancipated from Maya, delusions, and ignorance, because one understands. One becomes emancipated from the lower realms, because one's body composition transcends. Devoid of ignorance and emancipated from the lower realms that one can still view, a sage realizes his eternal existence in the infinite ocean of Shakti as Shakti itself. You are the universe, and at the stage of personhood, you are just a vibrating process within a single universe of vibrating fields and energies. There is yet a higher stage of immortals corresponding to the great golden Arhat, immanence body, or Tathagata's stage of perfect and complete enlightenment that is nirvana without remainder. Daoism says that this highest possible body, which is the true man of Daoism, or Atman Jiva of Hinduism within the hierarchy of bodily sheaths, is composed of primordial heavenly energy. This attainment, which corresponds to the 9th and 10th Bhumi stages of the Tathagata, or immanence body, is considered complete and perfect enlightenment, which is the stage of becoming a great golden Arhat. In Islam, it corresponds to the Insan al-Kamil, or perfect universal man. This is the Shiva Atma, or the Para Atma body of Sufism too. In Daoism, this is the stage of the universal immortal. This spiritual body arises out of the celestial immortal body after sufficient cultivation and is composed of primordial heavenly energy, a term for the highest energy level we can reach to compose a body of existence. This highest body attainment is comprised of the most fundamental energies of the universe, where a body formation is still possible because linkages can still exist between its rarefied components. At this stage, it is said that one does not hear, smell, or see, but becomes sight, sound, and smell simultaneously, because through the mind of this level of energetic beingness, one can instantly know what goes on within the lower vibratory realms. Thus one is said to be all-pervading. Buddhism calls this the interchangeability of the sense consciousnesses. This body is referred to as the consciousness skandha in Buddhism, the anandamya bliss kosha in Hinduism, the stage of no more learning, no more training or non-practice in Tibetan Buddhism, the stage of God consciousness in Kashmir Shaivism, the 10th Bodhisattva Bhumi, or stage of complete and perfect enlightenment in Buddhism, and Sachkhand, realm of truth, attainment in Sikhism, and the stage of nirvana without remainder, because it is said that no higher body vehicles are possible. The truest human being, released from all its shell, skandhas, or veils, now stands alone. This is the real man of Daoism, perfect man of Islam, and true man of Zen lore. Hence, you can see that the Daoist stages for immortals correspond to the Arat stages of Buddhism and the 5 eyes of 5 bodies mentioned in the Diamond Sutra of Buddhism: human, diva, wisdom, dharma, Buddha eyes. If all this information is truly real, then it must be the case that we have these correspondences in our world's genuine religions. Human body equals human immortal, diva body equals earth immortal equals Srotapana and Sakadagami Arat equals angel, wisdom body equals spiritual immortal equals Anagamin Arat equals causal body equals archangel, the Dharma body equals celestial immortal equals Arat equals supracausal body, the Buddha body equals universal body equals Tathagata equals great golden Arat equals eminence body. The attainment of any new body is called breaking through a skandha in Buddhism, purifying a kosha in Hinduism, and dropping a veil in Sufism. Each new body is a new stage of Aratship. In Hinduism, the Daoist immortal corresponds to individuals who have attained their subtle, causal, supracausal, and immanence bodies, which means individuals who have purified and cultivated all their koshas or bodies and finally reached the highest and purest body core possible for our existence. They also, as stated, correspond to the Arats of Buddhism known as Ioan in Chinese, whereas immortals are called Xian. The ranks of the Daoist immortals correspond to stages of spiritual ascension across the world's religions, precisely because they are all non-denominational ranks attained by the practitioners of all religions. When you think about it, for this to be real, it has to be the case. Now, it has already been explained that you enter the stage of true cultivation practice after you become an earth immortal. Upon this accomplishment, you then start cultivating the energy of this subtle body, which becomes your new center of life, to attain the next higher causal body, the stage of the spirit immortal, that is composed of an even more transcendental form of energy that Daoism calls Shen, or spirit. You should think of Shen as the life force of bodies made of Qi, just as you think of Qi as the life force of human earth bodies. The process of working as an earth immortal to become a spirit immortal is called refining Qi to attain Shen. It means working to attain the causal body stage of the Anagamin Arat, which is the stage of the spirit immortal, and afterwards you start working on refining/cultivating the energy of that body to achieve the Dharma body, supracausal body, rainbow body, or clear light body of the celestial immortal that is the stage of the full Arat. Daoism calls the process refining spirit, Shen, to attain emptiness, the supracausal body of the celestial immortal. The emptiness name for the supracausal body means that it is free of all vestiges of coarse matter from the lower realms of existence, whereas the Anagamin spiritual immortal body still had some impure energy matter elements, even though known as the pure illusory body in Tibetan Buddhism. These lower bodies of the terrestrial, earth, and spiritual immortal are still considered illusory bodies because they are not the highest core of the human being that Daoism calls the real man. Finally, the vital energy of this supracausal Buddha body, or celestial immortal body, is cultivated to attain the immanence body, or highest real man of existence that is his ultimate core. This final attainment constitutes the stage of complete and perfect enlightenment, the 10th Bodhisattva Bhumi, the stage of no more learning, or final spiritual liberation. The entire spiritual path of higher spiritual attainments is exactly this. You might also consider it a path of accumulating merit in this life through good deeds and a purification of your mind and behavior. If you are not a virtuous human being, you will not obtain the help of hundreds of higher beings working on purifying your body by producing continuous microcosmic, macrocosmic circulations inside you so that you can achieve the next stage of attainment. They also will not give power to someone who is evil or an asshole. Therefore, you must always be working on elevating your personality, mental patterns, habit energy, conduct, and skills so that you become a better human being and deserve enlightenment. You want to create the habit of helping others and improving the world so that you create a better foundation and fortune for yourself in a subsequent life to achieve the enlightenment of becoming a Taoist immortal. People thus endlessly go round and round the cycles of reincarnation, which is administered by sages, immortals, or Buddhas. However, you want to word enlightened humans so that people's etheric bodies do not disintegrate until individuals are finally virtuous enough and attain the purified subtle body so that they can start working to cultivate the nearly immortal, indestructible highest spiritual body. Taoism has a set of phrases that summarize the cultivation steps required for attaining the various bodies, thus illustrating what has been explained. According to traditional Taoist beliefs, the practice of spiritual cultivation can be divided into 5 steps: transforming grain or food into Jing, transforming Jing into Qi, Lian Hing Hao Qi, transforming Qi into spirit, Lian Qi Hao Shen, returning spirit to emptiness, Lian Shen Hao Zu, and combining emptiness with the Tao, Lian Zu He Dao. A rough way of translating this is that you eat grain, food, to maintain your life, Jing, and then Jing transforms into Qi, Qi transforms into Shen, Shen transforms into emptiness, the clear light body of an Arat empty of the lower realms of form-based existence. And you must go beyond this stage to attain a Tathagata's body that is one with the primordial energies of the universe. That is when one becomes universal, which is the stage of the universal immortal. This is someone who perceives the energies that form the universe and can sense that those energies penetrate their own body, thus realizing that everything is seamlessly interconnected, inseparably with a single fabric of the manifest universe. Hence, a Taoist classic states, perfecting, refining one's Jing results in perfecting, refining one's Qi, and perfecting, refining one's Qi results in perfecting one's Shen, although this only refers to the lower levels of achievement. A sage often starts teaching upon his or her attainment of the supracausal body, which is the 4th dhyana attainment of Buddhism, equivalent to a full arat or celestial immortal. In India, a student who achieves full aratship, which usually happens around 40 years old or earlier, is then, upon that achievement, often asked to take over a tradition. Upon the attainment of the Tathagata body, a sage typically says things to followers like, "My presence is always here with you." When Taoists say that, Jing, the physical body grown from semen, transforms into Qi, the Diva body. Qi transforms into Shen, the causal body. Shen transforms into emptiness, the supracausal body of the formless realm. And you must achieve a higher stage where the essence of an emptiness light body unifies with the fundamental substratum of nature. This basically means that one spiritual body arises out of another. You refine the energy of each body until it differentiates into higher and lower aspects, and after sufficient purification efforts, the higher aspect breaks free of the lower shell to become an independent new life and the new center of your existence. The attainment of the Tathagata's immanence body is composed of what Taoism calls primordial heavenly energy, which is the highest stage of corporality we can reach, where this body's composition is closest in purity or refinement to the ground state of the universe, namely its fundamental substratum. Of course, it is not the stage of the fundamental stratum, because then it wouldn't exist. It is the most primal form of man we can achieve, the real man encased within all these energy shells, and is considered his perfect universal form that can be reached through the practices and process of spiritual cultivation. It is the true center of the self in the midst of conditions. If we could go higher than that would be our highest self. Thus, the subtle body of Qi, impure illusory body, arises out of our physical body of matter to make one a Taoist earthy mortal. While working on purifying the inner subtle body, it is termed by Daoism the holy embryo, holy fetus, golden embryo, or embryo of sainthood. There is no small embryo inside you. It is just that the subtle energy matrix of your body is as yet unpurified, unrefined, or undeveloped, so the term embryo is used. The two bodies, the human physical body and the subtle body, remain tethered to each other upon this initial stage of enlightenment, and Buddhism calls the transitional place where the physical matter and higher chi energy are tethered to each other Ching Se, which means clear matter or pure matter. You can see pictures of these two bodies attached to one another in the Xingming Gaozi, Principles of Balanced Cultivation of Inner Nature and Vital Force. Next, the causal body of Shen energy, purified illusory body, arises out of the etheric body of Qi to make one a spiritual immortal. Now 3 bodies are tethered to one another, with the spiritual immortal body connected to the terrestrial earth immortal Diva body that is connected to the human physical body. An organism now exists that has multiple bodies composed of different energies and frequencies tethered to one another, where each resides on a different plane of existence. Next, the supra-causal body of later heavenly prana arises out of the causal body to make one a celestial immortal that is tethered to the spirit immortal body, and so on. This body can generate Nirmanakaya, and the next higher immanence, Great Golden Arat body, can generate Nirmanakaya that can themselves generate Nirmanakaya emanations. Wow! A picture of this is found in the famous Daoist classic, The Secret of the Golden Flower, while Tibetan Buddhism also has many illustrations on the way this works. In fact, each of the Nirmanakaya emanation bodies of the celestial immortal or supracausal body can be purified enough to attain the stage of the universal immortal too. When you are going through the 12 years of Kundalini transformations to attain the first spiritual body attainment, many masters will visit just so that their own higher Nirmanakaya emanations are simultaneously worked on as well, in order that those Nirmanakaya can achieve a higher degree of purification. On the spiritual path, you cultivate the internal vital energy or life force energy of each body. That energy becomes purified in the sense that a higher, more refined energy becomes differentiated from and then separates from a less pure energy residue, which is just the lower body, due to frictional churning. And then with sufficient separation and purification, it can arise out of the denser body as an independent spiritual life. Every time a new body arises, it is still attached to the lower body out of which it arose, and all the bodies linked together are called one's Sambhogakaya. It basically makes you a sentient being with multiple bodies of different energy compositions, and these bodies on different planes of existence are attached to one another, making a single organism that is thus no longer really human because of your anatomy and because the highest body becomes the new I center of your existence. After you become an earth immortal, it requires about 3 years for each new higher body attainment. Thus, after the attainment of the astral diva body, which takes about 12 to 13 years of active round-the-clock kundalini transformations, where your chi is constantly rolling around within your body to purify its energies through frictional contact, it requires another 3 years to attain the causal body, spiritual immortal attainment, and then 3 years for the supracausal celestial immortal attainment, and so on. Some masters go into secluded retreat during the first of these 3-year periods so that they can leave their bodies and travel around without being disturbed, or so that they can avoid other individuals possessing it while away and inadvertently causing troubles. In their later years, many enlightened masters die from cancer because their higher spiritual bodies spend too much time away from their physical body. Because of prolonged periods of insufficient qi due to that absence, and then not repairing themselves upon return, cancer becomes a common possibility. However, daily deep breathing methods to clear their body's qi and ivermectin with food, together with fenbendazole, might be a possible remedy to help such masters, along with other alternative modalities. See Super Cancer Fighters for information on SCT, low-dose naltrexone, etc. Humans who attain the subtle body attainment reach the Srotapana Sakadagami Arat stage, stream enterer of enlightenment, thus become an angel, diva, or homo deos, while divas, who start out at the level, such as those born in heaven, and start cultivating their body to a higher stage of purity, reach the more purified Sakadagami stage of the Arhats, but still remain just divas. This is just a higher stage of subtle body purification, the third and fourth bodhisattva bhumis, whose attainment means that upon death, the diva will, due to his purification, definitely be reborn in the realm of divas, heaven, rather than the human realm, which to most of them is a great relief. If you are a virtuous person during your human life and cultivated spiritual practices, then your chi will be somewhat purified. Therefore, virtuous humans in the afterlife will have a greater chance to be reborn in heaven instead of returning to the material world. When a human dies, they become a subtle-bodied spirit or diva, and we can think of this as becoming an angel. Some humans with improper habit energies, bad minds, and the tendencies for evil deeds are termed asuras, and they always have to be reborn as humans again. The Quran contains many sections on jinn that are basically divas, such as asuras, and even higher enlightened human beings who use their superpowers to mess with physical human beings. Divas are tricksters and play mind and energy games all the time on humans. If you were invisible to everyone with an etheric body that could travel everywhere quickly, or anywhere quickly, could know everyone's secret activities and hidden thoughts, and saw all the stupid things people do, you would look down on them with condescension and be tempted to use your powers to mess with them because it would be fun. That's a jinn, asura, or diva that is basically just fucking with people for entertainment purposes, although sometimes it is for good reasons. As a Taoist, you should throughout your life be working on cultivating the purification of your inner chi through cultivation exercises. You should be cultivating to purify your inner energy through frictional chi churning work. Then, even if you don't succeed in attaining enlightenment during this life, then after death, you will be far ahead of everyone else who didn't cultivate because you will have purified the chi, prana, energy of your subtle body to some degree. All divas within our earthly plane are cultivating their minds and bodies to reach a more purified stage of existence during their lifetime to assure for themselves, at the minimum, a rebirth in heaven again when their life is over, rather than rebirth as a human. Divas run around from master to master, hoping that their teacher will use his or her nirmanakaya to purify their own chi. And so when you are selected to go through the process of becoming an earth immortal and receive all that attention, you will then be surrounded by countless divas all the time who hope to also receive work on their own bodies during that long period. They'll also be using your body for various types of training purposes. A general Taoist rule states that you need to accumulate 3,000 great good deeds and 800 minor good deeds in order to deserve enlightenment and become an immortal, which means you must be a kind, virtuous, and charitable human being. In Liao Fan's 4 lessons, Yan Liao Fan, 1606, vowed to change his personality and behavior and pledged 3,000 good deeds if heaven would help him start changing his fate, which is what indeed happened from all his work at changing his personality and behavior. This is a book you should read. A similar book I always recommend is Eva Wong's Lao Tzu's Treatise on the Response of the Tao, but Liao Fan's 4 lessons is far more important. It is a book you can get for free on the internet and has lessons you should introduce to your children. Performing good deeds is one of the 3 vehicles of Taoism where saving a single life is not just a good deed, but a great good deed, because some deeds are more valuable than others. The Taoist adept Ji Hong said that you need to accumulate 300 good deeds to become an earth immortal, Srotapana, and 1,200 to become a celestial immortal, Anagaman. Ji Hong's numbers simply tell us to perform acts of merit to be worthy of the stages of enlightenment. Taoism states that the key to immortality, namely enlightenment, is that you cannot exist for yourself, which means you must develop the mind and behavior of compassionately aiding others like a Buddhist bodhisattva. This is what we discussed in chapter 1. Wowza. Yeah, we can get there. When we read the stories of the 8 Taoist immortals, we can see them traveling everywhere doing good deeds. A similar example from the ancient Hellenist world is the divine man, Apollonius of Tyana, 97, I don't know, D, period 97, who certainly attained enlightenment and then traveled around as a wonder worker, performing miraculous deeds to help people. Plenty of Christian, Muslim, and Hindu saints become wonder workers by traveling around and publicly performing miraculous good deeds to help people after their enlightenment, but most just perform them without anyone knowing that they were responsible. If you search the internet for wonder worker, Christian saints who performed miracles, you will find dozens with that name tag, most of whom had become enlightened. The use of non-Daoist masters to teach you about Daoism should not alarm you or offend you, since the stages of the cultivation are non-denominational. Because stories of modern Daoist masters who become enlightened are very lacking, we must turn to masters from other traditions like this, such as taking examples from Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, and so on, in order to derive some extra lessons that would be missing. For instance, in the stories of two Hindu masters, Bhagavan Nityananda and Neem Karoloi Baba, you can see lives like those of the 8 Immortals of Daoism, where countless superpowers and miracles are performed to help people. You can pick up a copy of Nityananda in Divine Presence, Bhagavan Nityananda of Ganeshpuri, and Miracle of Love to investigate these two masters if you are interested. It's fun reading, and you'll learn how some masters behave when using superpowers. The kami of Japan, although spirits, are also just humans who have ascended and invisibly help people, as are the Orisha of Africa. Similarly, the saints of Christianity, with their work as advocates and protectors, and the bodhisattvas of Buddhism, who fulfill their vows of compassion, are all examples of humans who have ascended as immortals, arhats, sages, saints, and so on, and take care of us. The stages of Taoist attainment are non-denominational, so we are simply calling them by different names from different traditions. We all share the same ladder of spiritual progress or spiritual ascension. The basic idea is that to qualify for becoming an immortal, which means to become enlightened, ascend, or become liberated, you need to be a good person who works for the benefit of others. Liao Fan's 4 Lessons, which has a Confucian, Buddhist, and Taoist flavor, and Lao Tzu's Treatise on the Response of the Tao can guide you along these lines. For Taoists, your minimum target in life should be to follow Taoist ways to become healthy and prosperous, which is cultivating the pathway of human immortals who are different from everyone else, eating junk food and following bad habits that affect their health, peace of mind, and prosperity. Becoming a human immortal simply means becoming a better human being by cultivating your health, longevity, prosperity, mind through meditation, and internal energy, along with maintaining the right Taoist mindset for handling life. You want to live a long time without disease or disability, with a happy mind, and remain youthful with sharp faculties. Health is not just an absence of disease or infirmity, but a state of physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being that Taoism can help you attain. Now, if you cultivate the inner Nigong path of Tao, you can also work on attaining the spiritual ascension stage of an earth immortal once you cultivate the basics of becoming a healthy human being, which is what Taoism calls a human immortal, as compared to ignorant people who don't practice health or well-being with any particular practices at all. Luckily for us, Taoism offers many ways for us to improve our ordinary lives, and meditation practice is always part of that prescription. The reason we went into all these details is to break the big mistaken notion that enlightenment is just some mental state of realization, after which suddenly your mind has the ability to perform all sorts of superpowers, such as create copies of your body that can appear everywhere to help people. All these body correspondences show that the true meaning of enlightenment is to attain transcendental spiritual bodies, and the other genuine spiritual schools all recognize this because they have also given all these bodies names. The ranks of the Taoist immortals absolutely match with these ranks of other religions. This must be the case if spiritual progress is a non-denominational process, and it is so the ranks match. However, while many schools in some way name these bodies to denote their capabilities, only Taoism calls its sages immortals. This denotes the fact that spiritual progress is basically a body attainment, and that even if you don't attain enlightenment in this life, you should still be cultivating your health, longevity, and prosperity. If you do attain any of these higher bodies, you will live for a longer period of time than in an ordinary human life, And every time you attain a new body, it will become the new center of your life, and it will possess new powers and capabilities on its plane of existence. In that realm, your mind will be the ordinary mind you have now. It is the attendant consciousness that comes with that new body, but it is a lot more clear since your body has become more energy-like in composition, so everything runs better. Hence, there is no special mental state that you try to cultivate through spiritual practices to become enlightened, although we do practice certain mental skills such as calming, concentration, visualization, emotional control, control of one's chi energy, and so on through meditation. The idea of cultivating mental emptiness, empty mind, or detachment is so that your chi flows better and so that junior divas have a chance to enter into you to purify your chi while theirs is also simultaneously being worked on. When they are within you by a Nirmanakaya emanation due to their service. Therefore, you cultivate periods of emptiness meditation where you are just watching your thoughts, but more importantly, you must also cultivate internal energy exercises that arouse your chi in order to eventually generate the subtle energy body to become an immortal. This raises the interesting point that the real you, after you become a Taoist immortal, become enlightened, is not the physical body that everyone else sees when they look at your human body. Let's say that you attain the supracausal celestial immortal body and generate a Nirmanakaya body double that is then accused of a crime in the material world. People would then arrest your physical body because it looks like the Nirmanakaya body double that committed the crime. Well, the physical human individual did not commit the crime. The human body is just the home base for all the higher transcendental bodies upstairs. It is a shell they can withdraw into or appendage they can use. It is just the home of the higher guys, so what you are seeing there is not the real man. It is just a living physical shell that the real man is indifferent to, indifferent to discarding, so think of it as just an ornament. The person in front of you did not project it to Nirmanakaya. The supracausal individual who has an entirely different birth time and different personality and resides on a different plane of reality than that of the human body from which he arose is the one who did something. You cannot arrest him because he's living on an entirely different plane of existence. He isn't the person you're seeing in front of you. The human in front of you did nothing. He did not generate that body double projection. The transcendental guy living on a higher plane did, and you cannot touch him or hurt him in any way. You cannot bribe him, threaten him, or his wealth or relatives, blackmail him, or cajole him into doing something for you in any way because he's living in another realm where your affairs don't touch him. He looks upon this world as a dream that he can cut off at any moment, so whatever you do has no sway over him, but is your own karma you are creating. In fact, many people on the higher planes where he resides can project Nirmanakaya that look just like him too, so how do you even know who actually did anything? It could be something else, just as countless different enlightened masters project tangible or visionary Nirmanakaya in this world looking like their version of Jesus to believers in order to fulfill the demand, and none of those images or figures come from Jesus. Millions of Buddhas are continuously intervening in human affairs across the world like this, and everyone is oblivious to this fact. The very old Buddhas practice giving people thin, very fine inkling warning thoughts about the future so that we might have the chance to change our karma, but those are the thoughts we usually ignore due to their thinness. Sci-fi movies always make the following mistake. They assume that an ordinary person can generate a body double to go and do things, but no human body can do that. Only a supracausal or immanence body can generate an energy body duplicate capable of bilocation and other feats, and such individuals don't exist on this earthly plane. They are individuals who reside on a higher plane of existence. Those are the guys who do it. Because they reside on a higher plane of existence, they only generate and project Nirmanakaya in order to interact with us on this plane of existence. As Meher Baba explains in God Speaks, they typically just give people thoughts or invigorate them with their Nirmanakaya emanations. Everyone might think that a spiritual master's material body is the individual at fault if a Nirmanakaya committed some type of infraction, whereas it is an entirely different individual from the upper realms that would be responsible for a crime. The supracausal body is an independent person, and the physical body we see is like an empty sleeve, or shell. In fact, from one of the sections of the Surangama Sutra, one can infer that anyone who achieves any stage of arhatship, which means to become a spiritual immortal, is no longer even a member of the human species anymore due to their higher anatomy. The third reason I went into these details is so that you could see some of the powers available to each of these spiritual bodies. In God Speaks, the Sufi Meher Baba, 1969, explains further details of the miraculous abilities available to each spiritual body, such as being able to make flowers blossom out of season, being able to give life to small animals, being able to generate fire, give you thoughts, and so forth. The reason that enlightened beings can give you thoughts is because through Nirmanakaya emanations, they can possess your brain stem, which in Daoism is called the muddy pellet, and the part of the brain responsible for thinking and thus consciousness. All they have to do, and this has happened to you countless times during your life without you knowing it, is emanate a Nirmanakaya body, possess someone, and use it to think of something, and then that individual will have those thoughts. The energy of a higher body can always override the energy of lower bodies, which is why it is always said that a master at a higher stage can shut off the superpowers of someone at a lower stage of attainment. Basically, the thoughts of the Nirmanakaya projection will override your thinking. This can be done for emotions as well. In Hinduism, people worship an erect Shiva linga because it represents the brainstem and thus consciousness, which is the great miracle of existence. They also worship the wish-fulfilling cow, Kamdenu, whose Egyptian equivalent is the Sphinx because it represents the brain and thus consciousness. They worship the wish-fulfilling tree, Kalpavriksha, which also represents the chi channels of the spine and brain and consciousness once again. To some, the erect Shiva linga represents the vitality of life, but it is actually worshipped because it represents the great miracle of the universe and our own greatest treasure, which is consciousness, the ability to be aware and have cognizance within a great sea of insentience composed of inert matter. Again, the Shiva linga represents the brainstem and thus consciousness. One thing I almost forgot to mention is that when the supracausal body, celestial immortal, or great golden arat generate Nirmanakaya to do things in the world, they typically look very similar to their core body. But with training, a master can generate a Nirmanakaya that looks very different from his regular body, such as by being taller, much younger, or have a different appearance altogether. In fact, with many years of practice, you can train to generate Nirmanakaya that don't look like you at all. If you want to generate one that looks like Jesus or some other spiritual great, then after years of practice, you can do so. In general, however, a Nirmanakaya will usually look very similar to the individual who generates it, complete in all details, because a body double is what naturally comes out of an energy duplicate. This is also the case with reincarnations. When you reincarnate, your appearance is affected by the genes of your new parents, but you will still resemble your past life appearance to some extent because your subtle body or soul was inserted into the fetus for reincarnation, and its shape was morphed as it unfolded in growth. If you investigate the story of James Leininger, Soul Survivor, the reincarnation of a World War II fighter pilot, you will find that he looks very similar to the man he believes he was in his past life due to his retained memories, which was World War II pilot James Houston Jr. It is easy to find pictures on the internet to verify the resemblance. As another example, there is the case of Carl Eden, who believes he is the reincarnation of German World War II pilot Heinrich Richter, whom he also strongly resembles. Richter lost his leg in a plane crash during his life, and Eden was reborn with a large birthmark on his groin at the top of his right leg as a carryover of the accident. When you suffer a wound in a past life, a scar or mark often appears in your present incarnation if you had not cultivated hard enough to purify your inner subtle body during that lifetime. This is another reason you want to be cultivating spiritual practice during this life. Yet another World War II reincarnation case where there is a strong facial resemblance is that of Martin Heald, Heald, from Manchester, who had strong recollections of his past life as a Sergeant Richard Seymour, who flew as an RAF fighter pilot before being gunned down. A Nirmanakaya that is broken off from an enlightened spiritual master to reincarnate again will therefore resemble the originating master. This is a fact that settles the dispute between the two individuals claiming to be the 17th Tibetan Gyalwang Karmapa, who is supposedly the reincarnation of Rangjung Rigpa Dorji, 1981. If you just look at the two claimants to the Karmapa throne, you will see who resembles the 16th Karmapa most. And if you then add any evidence of miraculous superpowers into the mix, then you will find the right claimant. Most of the assumed reincarnations in Tibet are entirely different individuals than those whom people say they are. They are usually just students who are simply being sponsored by the previously enlightened master so that they receive instant gravitas and good training. And the truly enlightened masters all know this, but just go along with the charade. The enlightened master whose name is being used is not emanating a Nirmanakaya for rebirth, but simply wants to keep his Tulka lineage alive, so the masters appoint someone to assume his name. It is very easy to cheat people into believing that a Tulka is the reincarnation of some famous Lama of the past. Sometimes they are, but you must remember that the Tibetan Lamas would do in the past. Remember what the Tibetan Lamas would do in the past. If the Buddhist leaders ever discovered a talented youth, they would quickly name him a Tulku and make him a monk so that the government could not swipe him up and employ him for his skills. If the enlightened lamas found a talented youth suitable for training, they would simply call him a Tulku reincarnation, and then the original Tulku enlightened a master. Oh my God. Give me a second. Back at it. Enlightened master, where are we at? Would sponsor the youth and project a Nirmanakaya emanation into him over the years to help him periodically. He would also take over his mind and body during the Tibetan testing process used to verify who he is so that the youth correctly chooses whatever items belonged to the master previously. A Nirmanakaya emanation can also be used to give people dreams or thoughts that in a past life they were someone great or did some wrong deed that accounts for their present misfortunate karma of some type, which is a fun trick often played by those who are enlightened in order to push people in certain directions. When you see visions, this is due to some enlightened being projecting an emanation into you as well. Unfortunately, so much of what masters do misleads people that a lot of misdirection happens in the world. No one, I repeat, no one who attains the Arat enlightenment stage of a celestial immortal, supracausal body, or universal immortal, immanence body, will reincarnate using that body and thus lose all their skills and knowledge. Rather, they will project a Nirmanakaya emanation for the purposes of reincarnation to fulfill their vows if they choose to do so. For instance, once a couple asked the Sufi saint Sai Baba of Shirdi, 1918, for a child, and he helped them conceive. Normally, a spiritual master will simply arrange for another soul to be born into the womb, but in this case, he told the mother that he separated off a piece of himself to make the baby possible, which means that he used his own Nirmanakaya to become her baby. The capability of creating life falls into the realm of the supracausal and immanence bodies, Arats and great golden Arats, who reside in the formless realm, and this is what it means. When Shakyamuni was asked about the origin of life, he would not trace it origins past the formless realm, which is their domicile of residence, and said that he would not speak about it. As another example of miraculous abilities, when an enlightened Daoist master makes food appear, he is not manifesting it out of nothingness, but using a higher spiritual body to take it from somewhere else. He's basically stealing it from elsewhere, speedily taking it from one place to another using a higher spiritual body, rather than manifesting it out of nothingness. There are many stories in Taoism where a master gives apples or plums to the public, and then local merchants find that their own stocks have dwindled the same amount. Using higher bodies, the master simply takes them from one place to another. Hence, when Jesus turned water into wine during the wedding at Cana in response to his mother asking for help, one very fair assumption is that he simply took it from another source, such as King Herod's palace. We could explain all sorts of miraculous abilities, such as levitation, manifesting food, talking with animals, knowing people's hearts or minds or future, bilocation, creating aromas, creating fire or rain, knowing the past and future, and so forth, but there is no reason for this discussion. If you attain a higher body, you will have many abilities available to you, and you just have to cultivate them, like learning how to cook or go fly fishing. The important point is to get started at becoming a Taoist immortal, so the entire premise of this book is not on Taoist philosophy or such esoteric discussions, but helping you to cultivate the way and knowing what it entails. Taoists focus on the method of training or the path, so we are discussing some very important points about the overall path that you will not find in print or hear from any master. This is meant to help guide you in Taoism.